Chapter 3987. The fact that Duanling Tian had comprehended the embryonic form of the sword principle was no secret in Tunglung province. In fact, many people had seen the floating image pearl where Duanling Tian had killed 2 mid-level god emperors in the Tianlong clan, including Machi Ju, the golden seat elder of the Machi family. Duanling Tian did not dare to use the Tao of Control because there was a group of god emperor experts present. However, his current mastery of the law of space was much better than before. It was no longer any weaker than when he used the Tao of Control to display the law of space. Therefore Machi Ju did not think much of it. He only thought that Duanling Tian had neglected his comprehension of the law of space because he had been focusing on breaking through to the mid-level god emperor realm for the past few decades. He would never have thought that Duanling Tian had also comprehended the Tao of Control, another of the 4 Taos of heaven and earth. The image recorded by the floating image pearl was only an image after all. Even a God Emperor expert would not be able to see that Duanling Tian had used the Tao of Control through the floating image pearl, unless they were there. Now, if Duanling Tian used the Tao of Control, a God Emperor expert would definitely be able to see through it. Because of this, Duanling Tian did not plan to use the Tao of Control in the battle against Machi Hong. It would be too high profile and he wanted to keep some trump cards hidden. Being too high profile was not a good thing for him. Based on his current performance, he was already second to none among the younger generation in Tunglung province. If he were to be too high profile, he would be going too far. Moreover, before this, no one in the Tunglung province knew that he had mastered the Tao of Control, including the embryonic form of the Tao of Control. Not even 3,000 years old. His talent is not bad. Although Machi Ju felt that Duanling Tian had no hope of defeating his great-grandson, he could not help but sigh when he thought of Duanling Tian's current age. In fact, decades ago he had planned to take Duanling Tian as his disciple. It was to the extent that the people sent by the Machi clan to invite Duanling Tian into the Machi clan were from his branch. At first, because Duanling Tian did not intend to leave the Tianlong clan, he was politely rejected. For the last time, Zhen Pingfan from Chunyang School came to the Tianlong clan and drove his people away from the Tianlong clan. If he's given some more time, he might really be able to catch up to Hong, Machi Ju thought to himself. At the same time, a cold glint flashed in the depths of Machi Ju's eyes when he recalled that Duanling Tian was now a student of Chunyang School and not a member of the Machi family. If there's a chance to get rid of him, it's better to do so. Although the relationship between Chunyang School and the Machi clan isn't bad, once he matures in Chunyang School, he'll be a huge threat to the Machi clan. It's best to get rid of him since he's from a Devata realm and has no background. A hint of killing intent flashed in the depths of Machi Ju's eyes. At this moment, Machi Ju was not the only one with killing intent. Some of the high-ranking officials from the 7 Kills Valley, the Alliance of Benevolence and Righteousness, and the Dragon Martial Heavenly Sect had similar killing intent in their eyes. Naturally, the killing intent in their eyes was not only directed at Duanling Tian, but it was also directed at Machi Hong. They did not want a genius like Duanling Tian to appear in Chunyang School. Naturally, they did not want a genius like Machi Hong to appear in the Machi clan as well. The 2 young men in front of them made the other young geniuses pale in comparison. They casually glanced at the young geniuses they had brought with them and saw the shock in their eyes. They were shocked by Duanling Tian and Machi Hong's strength. Duanling Tian is actually so strong? When Lan Shilin from the Pure Sun sect saw Duanling Tian gaining the upper hand, his face was filled with shock and disbelief. Previously, although he knew Duanling Tian was not weak, he did not have a clear idea of how strong Duanling Tian was. Although he had seen the scryer recording of Duanling Tian killing 2 intermediate divine emperors when he was only a lesser divine emperor, he did not see it for himself. However, at this moment, Lan Shilin was completely shocked when he saw the battle between Duanling Tian and Machi Hong. A brat who was not even 3,000 years old was actually so strong? Even if Machi Hong hadn't activated the power of his bloodline and used the power granted by his bloodline, it was still shocking to see him suppressed to such an extent. After all, Machi Hong was twice as old as Lan Shilin. How strong would Duanling Tian be when he reaches Machi Hong's age? At this moment, Lan Shilin's heart was filled with despair. Even his hatred for Duanling Tian began to waver. In the past, he did not take his great-grandfather's advice seriously. However, at this moment, when he thought of it again, he deeply realized his great-grandfather's good intentions. Forget it. I won't argue with him. In the future he will walk his own path and I will cross my bridge. At this moment, Lan Shilin completely gave up on taking revenge on Duanling Tian. Machi Hong, if this is all you have, I'm afraid you will lose your ancestors' half-soul high-grade divine artifact. Duan Lingtian's original body and doppelganger joined forces and gained the upper hand. He was incomparably valiant. On the other hand, Ma Qihong was retreating. Umph. Ma Qihong snorted coldly. Duan Lingtian, I just wanted to see how strong you are. I have to say your strength is indeed surprising. In Tunglung province, apart from me, there might not be a second person under the age of 10,000 who is a match for him. Unfortunately, you met me, Ma Qihong. Today Duan Lingtian will definitely lose. As soon as Ma Qihong's voice fell, his body suddenly shook before he turned into a bolt of lightning and retreated in a flash. In the blink of an eye, he had distanced himself from Duan Lingtian. In the next moment, his eyes narrowed as the blood mist in his body surged into the sky. Then, it merged with the lightning energy around him and transformed into a lightning phantom that was surrounded by blood mist. The phantom held a spear in its hand. Duan Lingtian, my bloodline fighting soul is not weaker than your doppelganger. Ma Qihong shouted in a low voice before his body swayed again and charged toward Duan Lingtian. The lightning phantom above his head charged toward Duan Lingtian as well. The enlarged spear in the lightning phantom's hand vibrated as it charged toward Duan Lingtian's doppelganger. In fact, if he did not use his doppelganger, it would be difficult for Duan Lingtian to be a match for Ma Qihong even if he used the fledgling form of sword principle. It was precisely because of the doppelganger's existence that he was able to suppress Ma Qihong when he joined forces with his original body. Their comprehension of the laws was similar, so Duan Lingtian did not have an advantage in this aspect. In terms of cultivation, Duan Lingtian was slightly inferior. It was precisely because of the advantage of the law doppelganger and the fledgling form of sword principle that he was able to catch up to Ma Qihong in terms of cultivation and even slightly suppress Ma Qihong. However, after Ma Qihong activated his bloodline power, the situation of the battle reversed in an instant. In the beginning, Duan Lingtian was barely able to fight Ma Qihong to a draw. However, after a few moments the same thing happened again. This time, the one who was at a disadvantage was not Ma Qihong, but Duan Lingtian. Ma Qihong has activated his bloodline power. His bloodline power is a bloodline battle soul. It's called the Battle Soul Bloodline. This Battle Soul Bloodline is an inherited bloodline unique to the direct descendants of the Machi clan. The Battle Soul Bloodline. When the power of one's bloodline is fused with one's divine energy and laws, it'll form a battle soul to assist in battle. Its strength is not inferior to the law clones formed by the laws of the Devata realms. When Ma Qihong activated his bloodline power and revealed his Battle Soul Bloodline, many people in the surroundings recognized it as the Battle Soul Bloodline of the Machi clan. Initially, Duan Lingtian had the upper hand because Ma Qihong did not activate his bloodline power. However, now that the Battle Soul Bloodline has appeared, Duan Lingtian is going to lose. Although Duan Lingtian is going to lose this battle, it's still an honorable loss. After all, he's not even 3,000 years old yet. Indeed. In terms of age, Duan Lingtian is several times more outstanding than Ma Qihong. However, it's a pity that he lost those 100 Supreme King Grade Divine Pills. If you didn't mention the Supreme King Grade Divine Pills, I would have forgotten about them. I really don't understand why Duan Lingtian would spend so much effort on the Divine Pill Dao. With his innate talent and comprehension ability, if he didn't study the Divine Pill Dao and focused on his cultivation instead, he might be able to defeat Ma Qihong today. It's him, his path has gone astray. However, even if his path has gone astray, looking at the history of the Eastern Ridge Prefecture from ancient times till now, I'm afraid no one has been more outstanding than him in terms of achievements at his age. Although most people thought Duan Lingtian was going to lose, they were still shocked by the strength he had displayed. What made them even more shocked was that Duan Lingtian was a genius. Such a young man was also an expert in the Tao of Divine Pellets, capable of concocting the Limit King Grade Divine Pellet, the kind of divine pellet that only the best of the best in the East Mountain Prefecture could concoct. In terms of Divine Pill Dao, this young man had already caught up with the Divine Pill Masters who stood at the top of Tunglung Province. He's a genius. If I knew he's so monstrous, I would have personally invited him to join the Martial Dragon Heavenly Sect. That fellow Zhenping Fan has taken advantage of him. While the people from the Benevolent and Righteous Alliance and the Martial Dragon Heavenly Sect were sighing, Yi Tong, the hidden sword progeny's elder from Chunyang School, could not help but look at Zhenping Fan through voice transmission when he saw Duan Lingtian was about to lose. Junior brother Zhen, look at you. Why do I feel like you're not worried that Duan Lingtian will be defeated by Ma Qihong? You're the one who started the conflict with the Machi clan. This time, Duan Lingtian lost 100 Supreme King Grade Divine Pills. Logically speaking, you should be responsible for half of the loss. At this moment, Yi Tong was already thinking about helping Duan Ling Tian share the loss of the bet. He knew that his master valued Duan Ling Tian very much. Senior brother Yi. Zhen Pingfan said through voice transmission with a smile, do you really want Duan Ling Tian to lose that badly? Chem? Yi Tong's expression froze when he heard Zhen Pingfan's words. At the same time, a bold thought flashed through his mind. Swoosh. The crisp sound of a sword whistling through the air rang in the air. It was so piercing that even Yi Tong, a lesser god emperor, felt his eardrums tremble. Chapter 3988. The moment the sword was drawn, the world turned cold. The sudden sword howl caused the originally noisy scene to fall into a deathly silence. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian's space law avatar, who was originally suppressed by Mo Qihong's fighting soul, suddenly changed his situation. The sword essence on his body seemed to have merged with the high-grade divine sword in his hand. Then, with a whistling sound, the space law avatar slashed out and instantly defeated the originally awe-inspiring fighting soul. The avatar, who was being suppressed a moment ago, instantly turned the situation around when the sword whistled out. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that he had defeated his opponent in one fell swoop. The fighting soul bloodline, as its name implied, was a bloodline that could condense a fighting soul. However, condensing a fighting soul required overdraft of the bloodline power. Even if the bloodline power was at its peak, it could only condense a maximum of 3 fighting souls under the condition that the fighting soul did not consume too much bloodline power. However, the consumption of Mo Qihong's bloodline power was much greater than he had imagined. What's going on? Mo Qihong was slightly stunned when his fighting soul was suddenly defeated. He even gave up the advantage of his original body and quickly stepped on the lightning to distance himself from Duan Lingtian. Then, another fighting soul appeared above his head. Although this fighting spirit did not appear to be any different from the previous one, if one were to look closely and use one's spiritual consciousness to approach it, it was not difficult to discover that it was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. However, Duan Lingtian did not allow Mo Qihong to increase the distance between them. Then, a sword ray, which was a fusion of divine power and space energy, flashed under the feet of Duan Lingtian and his space law avatar. Simultaneously, 2 sword whistles that seemed to be able to shake the heavens and the earth resounded. After Duan Lingtian and his space law avatar appeared not far away from Mo Qihong, the sword ray under their feet carrying them quickly charged toward Mo Qihong. I'll kill you while you're sick. How could Duan Lingtian, who was fighting fiercely with Mo Qihong's fighting soul, not notice that Mo Qihong's fighting soul was strong on the outside but weak on the inside? In the face of the menacing Duan Lingtian, Mo Qihong did not have time to think about what had just happened. Since it was already difficult for him to dodge, he chose to face Duan Lingtian head-on. Boom. Rumble. Deafening thunderclaps filled the void as Duan Lingtian wielded his spear and attacked Duan Lingtian. The battle soul above his head also wielded its spear and attacked Duan Lingtian's law clone. Looks like that's all you have. At this moment, Duan Lingtian spoke in a slightly lazy tone. After that, before Mo Qihong and the others could react, Duan Lingtian's true body and his law avatar drew their swords in unison. 2 rays of sword light flickered from the high-grade divine swords, and they carried sword intent that shot into the sky. The sword will soared into the sky, as if cold air was spreading in all directions. Even the Valley Master of 7 Kills Valley, Wei Chundao, seemed to be unable to stop this cold air. For a moment, the onlookers only felt a bone-chilling coldness from head to toe. No, to be precise, it was sword intent. In the next instant, before the onlookers could recover from their shock, they saw Duan Lingtian's law clone. Once again, Duan Lingtian's law clone wielded his sword and instantly killed Mo Qihong's battle soul. After that, Duan Lingtian's true body also annihilated the dragon-shaped spear radiance on Mo Qihong's spear with his sword. Then he flicked the spear away before killing Mo Qihong with his sword. Stop. Mo Qiju regained his senses and shouted with his eyes wide open. However, with his current distance it was still too late. However, Wei Chundao, the Valley Master of 7 Kills Valley, was able to make his move in time. However, just as he was about to make his move, he seemed to have noticed something and stopped in his tracks. In the next instant, a loud bang was heard. Duan Lingtian had turned the sword in his hand at the critical moment. The sword blade turned into a sword body and landed on Mo Qihong's chest. Mo Qihong was sent flying. Along the way he spurted out a mouthful of blood. His aura was weak and he was in a sorry state. In the end he barely managed to stop himself. When Machi Hong, who was on the verge of collapsing, looked at Duan Lingtian again, his eyes were filled with disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. What kind of technique is that? How did it increase your strength to such an extent? Originally he had already used all his techniques and had suppressed Duan Lingtian. Victory was only a matter of time. However, he did not expect that the sword in Duan Lingtian's hand would display a strange force that suppressed him. Not only did it destroy his battle soul, but it also planted a seed in him. At this moment he was already extremely lucky to be able to stand. His internal organs were shattered, and it would be difficult for him to recover without a period of time to recuperate. Ancestor Xian's half-soul high-grade divine weapon. Machi Hong's face turned pale when he thought about the bet this time. He gritted his teeth and wanted to force himself to charge at Duan Lingtian again. However, he discovered that he had only moved a short distance when his vision turned black. Machi Hong fell to the ground as he charged at Duan Lingtian again in front of a group of people. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, and Machi Ju appeared where his great-great-grandson Machi Hong fell to the ground. He held Machi Hong up, but his expression was as ugly as it could be. He had lost. He had actually lost. Before this, he had never thought that he would lose. That was until Duan Lingtian displayed such a technique. Duan Lingtian, you're good, very good. Machi Ju, who was supporting the unconscious Machi Hong, turned around and coldly glanced at Duan Lingtian. You've been hiding the fact that you've comprehended the sword principle because you want to seize my half-soul high-grade divine weapon, right? I'll remember this. As soon as Machi Hong finished speaking, he prepared to leave with Machi Hong. However, at this moment Zhen Pingfan stepped forward. Martial Uncle Machi, this matter has nothing to do with Duan Lingtian. It was my idea. Once your half-soul high-grade divine weapon is in Duan Lingtian's hands, it will immediately be transferred to me. I'd like to thank Martial Uncle Machi for his generosity. Zhen Pingfan grinned brilliantly. Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Machi Ju finally recalled that it was not Duan Lingtian who had acted presumptuously and stirred up trouble. It was Zhen Pingfan who had stirred up trouble first. For a time, Machi Ju took a deep breath before he turned around and glanced deeply at Zhen Pingfan, and then he left silently. Duan Lingtian had not forcefully seized his half-soul high-grade divine weapon. Moreover, Duan Lingtian did not possess the strength to do so. The other party had taken his half-soul high-grade divine artifact in broad daylight. However, Machi Ju would still remember this grudge. At this moment, if he still could not figure out that Zhen Pingfan and Duan Lingtian had teamed up to cheat him out of his half-soul high-grade divine weapon, he would have lived for tens of thousands of years in vain. Zhen Pingfan, Duan Lingtian. Although Machi Ju now knew that Zhen Pingfan was the instigator, he did not intend to let Duan Lingtian off the hook. If he had the chance, he would make a move decisively and kill Duan Lingtian to vent his anger. As for Zhen Pingfan, it would not be easy to kill him. Even now, Zhen Pingfan possessed a half-soul high-grade divine weapon. Although it would not be difficult for Machi Ju to defeat Zhen Pingfan, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill Zhen Pingfan. Defeating a person and killing a person were two different concepts. Zhen Pingfan had a celestial the Arch spaceship. Unless Machi Ju could kill Zhen Pingfan with a single blow, it would be almost impossible for him to catch up with Zhen Pingfan once he boarded the spaceship. He was only a mid-level celestial the Arch, and the celestial the Arch spaceship's fastest speed was comparable to a high-level celestial Thearchus. Even if it was only comparable to the speed of an ordinary high-level celestial the Arch, it was still not something he could compare to. Unless he became a high-level celestial the Arch, he would not be able to catch up with the celestial the Arch spaceship. Of course, as the Golden Seat elder of the Machi family, Machi Ju also had his own celestial the Arch spaceship. However, so what? At most, he could maintain a speed comparable to Zhen Pingfan's spaceship. It was almost impossible for him to catch up with Zhen Pingfan. He even targeted me. Does he think that I am easy to bully? When Duan Lingtian saw that Machi Ju had not targeted Zhen Pingfan before he left and had even glanced at him with killing intent, he could not help but smirk. Elder Zhen had made it very clear that he would take responsibility for everything. However, it seemed like Machi Ju liked to bully the weak and fear the strong. Of course, even if he felt pressured, Duan Lingtian did not take it to heart. As long as he did not give Machi Ju the chance to attack him, it would not be easy for Machi Ju to kill him. He was usually in Chunyang school, so he was not worried about Machi Ju killing him. As for leaving Chunyang school for the 7 prefectures banquet, he would definitely be accompanied by several celestial the Arch gods from Chunyang school. If Machi Ju dared to kill him at that time, he would be seeking his own death. I should reduce the number of people who go out. Of course, at this moment, Duan Ling Tian reminded himself that after returning to Chunyang School, he should not go out unless necessary. Even if he went out, he had to be accompanied by a celestial the arch-god. For example, Zhen Pingfan. Although Zhen Pingfan's cultivation was not as high as Mochi Ju's, when he returned and refined Mochi Ju's half-soul high-grade divine weapon into his own, his strength would increase tremendously. At that time, Mochi Ju, who had lost his half-soul high-grade divine weapon, might not be able to threaten Zhen Pingfan. After all, Zhen Pingfan was the strongest person below a celestial the arch-god in Chunyang School. In the past few decades, he had heard from many people in the Pure Sun sect's Yun Peak that no one below the level of a middle god emperor in the entire Eastern Ridge Prefecture dared to claim that they could defeat Zhen Pingfan. Duan Ling Tian just ignore him. Zhen Pingfan saw Duan Ling Tian staring blankly at Mochi Ju's back. He seemed to have guessed what Duan Ling Tian was thinking. Just don't go out by yourself in the future. If you have to go out, just let me know. You've done me a great favor this time. Obtaining a half-soul high-grade divine weapon in advance will be of great help to my future cultivation. At the very least, I won't have to spend time and effort to refine a half-soul high-grade divine weapon. Zhen Pingfan was clearly in a good mood. At the same time, the people from the Mochi clan left with ugly expressions on their faces. The trade fair would last for more than a day. Most of them were not in the mood to stay and trade with others. Even if some of them were not affected by the trade fair, it would not be good for them to stay when they saw that the others had left. Of course, as they left, they communicated with each other through voice transmission. Duan Ling Tian has comprehended the Sword Dao. It's not the embryonic form of the Sword Dao but the true Sword Dao. The Sword Dao is too terrifying. Chapter 3989. Duan Ling Tian had won. Duan Ling Tian had actually won. It was only after the people from the Mochi clan left that the rest of the people present finally regained their senses. After that, the gazes of the group of people descended onto Duan Ling Tian in unison. At this moment, Duan Ling Tian was receiving the 100 Peak King grade divine pills from Wei Chun Dao, the Valley Master of the Seven Kills Valley, under Zhen Pingfan's instructions. He also received the half-soul high-grade divine weapon that Mochi Ju had handed over earlier. However, as soon as Duan Ling Tian obtained the half-soul high-grade divine weapon, he tossed it to Zhen Pingfan. This thing was a hot potato. If he took it today, he would only have endless trouble waiting for him. At that time, it would not be as simple as Mochi Ju and the people from the Mochi clan who would target him. Anyone who wanted this half-soul high-grade divine weapon would think of ways to snatch it from him. Duan Ling Tian, I won't say anything unnecessary. Zhen Pingfan will remember this favor. Zhen Pingfan did not decline. He immediately stored the half-soul high-grade divine weapon into his body in front of all the god emperors present. For a moment, a black glow flashed around his body. However, under the suppression of his own strength, the half-soul high-grade divine weapon could only obediently be suppressed in his body. Half-soul high-grade divine weapons were divine weapons that could only be created by intermediate god emperors and above. This divine weapon had a certain connection with the existence that gave birth to it. When others obtained this divine weapon, they could only slowly subdue it until it was completely subdued. Only then would it truly become one's divine weapon and not someone else's. It could also be seen as a process of recognizing a master. Elder Zhen, I still owe you a favor. Duan Ling Tian sent a voice transmission with a smile. Take this half-soul high-grade divine weapon as a return of the favor. How can that be? Zhen Pingfan said, not to mention that I don't think I've done you any favors. Even if you really see the small things I did as a favor, it's not comparable to the favor you're giving me now. A half-soul high-grade divine artifact is a priceless treasure in Tunglung province. In front of a high-grade half-soul divine artifact, what I did for you in the past is nothing. Moreover, what I did for you in the past was only so that you could enter Chunyang School and join Yun Peak. You joining Yun Peak can be considered as returning the favor to me. Zhen Pingfan will remember this favor today. After listening to Zhen Pingfan's words, although Duan Ling Tian felt helpless, he could hear the determination in the other party's voice, so he didn't say anything more. However, in his heart, he did not feel that Zhen Pingfan owed him a favor. Duan Ling Tian, I didn't expect you to have comprehended Sword Dao. At this moment, while a group of people stared at Duan Ling Tian, Valley Master Wei Chun Dao of Seven Kills Valley was also looking at Duan Ling Tian. He was the closest to Duan Ling Tian, and his face was filled with emotion. Sword Dao. True Sword Dao. Not the embryonic form of Sword Dao. Looking at the current generation of Tunglung province, as far as we know, you're the second person to have mastered Sword Dao. Wei Chundao exclaimed. Apart from Sword Dao, no one else in the current generation of Tunglung Province has comprehended the four Dao of heaven and earth. In other words, in the entire current generation of Tunglung Province, only the two of you have mastered one of the four Dao of heaven and earth. Moreover, you're both in Chunyang School. What made Wei Chundao sigh the most was the last sentence. That was right. They were both in Chunyang School. Apart from Duan Ling Tian, the other person who had comprehended Sword Dao was Yi Qin Feng, the ancestor of Chunyang School's hidden sword villa. Valley Master Wei, you flatter me. I'm just lucky. Duan Ling Tian smiled faintly. Wei Chundao shook his head. If it's just the embryonic form of Sword Dao, I can say that you're lucky. It's basically impossible to master the true Sword Dao if you're not a genius. You don't have to be modest about this. Otherwise, wouldn't all of us who have lived for tens of thousands of years have wasted our lives? When Wei Chundao reached the end of his sentence, there was a hint of sadness in the depths of his eyes. Sword Dao. He's actually mastered Sword Dao. As soon as the ear-shattering sword whistle entered his ears, Elder Jingshu of Chunyang School's hidden sword school, Yi Tong, heard something strange and felt that the sword was extraordinary. Later on, when he saw Duan Ling Tian attack again, he could see that Duan Ling Tian had mastered Sword Dao, the true Sword Dao. Moreover, compared to the Sword Dao that his master Yi Qin Feng had mastered, it did not seem to be inferior. They're walking different paths, but his attainments in Sword Dao don't feel any weaker than Master Sword Dao. As Yi Qinfeng's proud disciple, Yi Tong had received Yi Qinfeng's true teachings. Under Yi Qinfeng's guidance, the embryonic form of Sword Dao became more and more obvious. He was confident that he could master the embryonic form of Sword Dao within 10,000 years. This was not mastering the embryonic form of Sword Dao because of luck, but by relying on himself. However, if Yi Tong was asked if he was confident that he could master the true Sword Dao in his lifetime, he had no confidence at all. Sword Dao was too difficult. Even if it was just the embryonic form of Sword Dao, it took him a lot of time and energy. Otherwise, with his talent and comprehension, he might not necessarily be weaker than Jinping Fan if he focused all of his efforts on improving his cultivation base and comprehending the laws. However, if he comprehended the embryonic form of Sword Dao, even if he still did not have the strength to defeat Jinping Fan, he was confident that he could fight him to a draw. Sword Dao. Duan Ling Tian has comprehended Sword Dao? Even though Lan Shilin had just given up on finding trouble with Duan Ling Tian, he was still shocked when he saw Duan Ling Tian display Sword Dao and defeat Ma Qihong, the number one person under 10,000 years old in Tunglung Province. Duan Ling Tian was actually so strong? He had heard people say that Ma Qihong would enter the top 3 in the 7 prefectures banquet without much suspense. Now, even Ma Qiju had been defeated by him. In other words, he also had a chance to enter the top 3? Or was he more stable than Ma Qihong? Lan Shilin. At this moment, the voice of Elder Spirit Void of Chunyang School, Lu Hui, reached Lan Shilin's ears through telepathy. In the future, you really must not think about going against Duan Ling Tian. Moreover, it's better to befriend him as much as possible. There shouldn't be much suspense for him to enter the top 3 in the 7 prefectures banquet. And if he enters the top 3 in the 7 prefectures banquet, our Chunyang School will have one more person. He also has the right to recommend that person for that person. As long as he takes advantage of the situation and does a favor to a Void Peer Stage Elder. That Void Peer Stage Elder will also become his backer. At that time he will have 3 great Void Peer Stage backers in Chunyang School. When Lu Hui reached the end of his speech, his tone was filled with fear. 3 great Void Peer Stage experts. Although Lan Shilin had already decided not to go against Duan Ling Tian, he still felt a chill down his spine when he heard Lu Hui's words. It would be fine if it was just the old ancestor of Yun Peak. His great-grandfather was the martial nephew of that old ancestor. They had a good relationship. Even if he really killed Duan Ling Tian, that old ancestor might not really take his life for the sake of his great-grandfather. However, if Duan Ling Tian had 2 other Void Peer Stage Elders as his backers, even if that old ancestor of Yun Peak was willing to protect him, he might not necessarily be able to do so, right? At the same time, the other people in Chunyang School were also shocked. No one had expected that Duan Ling Tian had actually comprehended the Sword Dao. He had become the 3rd person in the history of Chunyang School to comprehend the 4 Daos of heaven and earth. The first person in the history of Chunyang School to comprehend the 4 Daos of heaven and earth was the founding ancestor of Chunyang School, Lu Dongbin. He had comprehended the Dao of control of the 4 Daos of heaven and earth. His strength was astonishing, and he had even stepped into the high-level God Emperor realm. He had killed many high-level God Emperors before. After that, he left Chunyang School and there was no longer any news about him. Some people said that he had died under the 1,000-year heavenly tribulation. Some people said that he might have broken through to the hierarch realm and wandered around the world. As for whether he was still alive, no one knew. However, most people felt that it was unlikely that he was still alive, unless he had become a supreme expert. However, that was not very realistic. The Sword Dao, the expressions of the people from the Seven Kills Valley, the people from the Alliance of Benevolence and Justice, and the Martial Dragon Heavenly Sect became more and more solemn. Chunyang School actually had another monstrous genius who had comprehended the Sword Dao. Oh, this person was even more monstrous than the other person in Chunyang School. He was not even 3,000 years old, but he had the ability to fight against enemies who were higher realms than him. Moreover, he had comprehended the Sword Dao and had the ability to kill ordinary high-level God Emperors. How could the Pure Sun sect have such great luck? First it was Yi Qinfeng. Now it's Duan Tian. Why do I feel that Chunyang School has taken all the benefits? We have to send this news back immediately. Duan Tian from Chunyang School is going to be one of the top 3 places in the 7 prefectures banquet. The intermediate God Emperors from Chunyang School will be able to enter the top 3 places in the 7 prefectures banquet. Perhaps Chunyang School will have a high-level God Emperor because of this. Although everyone was only shocked on the surface, the scene was very quiet. However, at this moment they were secretly sending out messages one after another. The messages were not only spread in the Seven Kills Valley, but they also spread out of the Seven Kills Valley to the Alliance of Benevolence and Justice's base and the Martial Dragon Heavenly Sect's base. Of course, those who had left the Mochi clan also sent the news back to their clans. In fact, there was another point in their message. Machi Hong had lost Golden Seat Elder Machi Ju's Superior Soul Divine Artifact. He had lost it to Duan Tian. The Superior Soul Divine Artifact was now in the hands of Elder Zhen Pingfan of Chunyang School. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the trade fair. The Valley Master of 7 Slaughter Valley, Wei Chun Dao, spoke, breaking the silence of the scene and causing the dazed crowd to return to their senses. Only then did they remember that they were here to participate in the trade fair. Of course, the higher-ups of the Alliance of Benevolence and Justice and the Martial Dragon Heavenly Sect all congratulated Zhen Pingfan. Congratulations, Elder Zhen, for obtaining a Superior Soul Divine Artifact. Your Chunyang School has Duan Tian. I'm afraid your Chunyang School is going to make a killing in the 7 prefectures banquet. Congratulations, Elder Zhen. Duan Tian is amazing. He has mastered the Sword Dao at such a young age. I remember that your sect's Elder Yi Qinfeng only mastered the Sword Dao after he was 10,000 years old, right? Chapter 3990. Chunyang School had produced another person who had mastered the way of the sword. When the news spread, it was like a cannonball had been dropped into the ocean. The 5 major forces in Tunglung province were shocked. The 7 Kills Valley, the Machi clan, the Eni Alliance, and the Dragon Martial Heavenly Sect were not the only ones who were shocked. Even the Chunyang School was shocked. Duan Tian had mastered the way of the sword? Before the news from the 7 Kills Valley spread, the people in Chunyang School only knew that Duan Tian had mastered the rudimentary form of the way of the sword. They did not know that Duan Tian had mastered the way of the sword. Duan Tian has mastered the way of the sword? I didn't expect the Chunyang School to have a second person like that. Junior Granduncle Yi from the Hidden Sword faction relied on the way of the sword and the extraordinary laws to be recognized as the strongest person in Chunyang School. Now, Duan Tian has also mastered the way of the sword and defeated Machi Hong from the Machi clan. He's definitely the strongest person among the younger generation in Tunglung province. This is really shocking. Duan Tian has only been a medium God Emperor for 2 years, but he defeated Machi Hong who had been a high-level God Emperor for 100 years. Duan Tian helped Elder Zhen from Yunfeng win a High Soul Divine Weapon? Moreover, it was the High Soul Divine Weapon of Machi clan's Golden Throne Elder Machi Ju? Machi Ju must be so angry that he's about to vomit blood. Duan Tian is amazing. In the past, although Duan Tian was famous in Chunyang School and had the floating image pearl to prove his strength, it was still something that had happened in the Tianlong clan. The Tianlong clan was just a has-been Emperor God force without a God Emperor. Even if a lower God Emperor had killed 2 medium God Emperors, it did not mean that he was heaven-defying. Who knew if those 2 middle-level godly emperors were weak or not? Without an authoritative reference, there were actually many people in Chunyang School who were not convinced by Duan Tian and felt that Duan Tian did not live up to his name. Just like last time when the Chunyang school gave Duan Lingtian a lot of resources to help Duan Lingtian break through and become a mid-level godly emperor, Lan Shilin of the righteous branch was not the only one who was dissatisfied. Many people from other branches were also dissatisfied. But today, with the news from the Seven Kills Valley that Duan Lingtian had defeated Ma Qihong, almost everyone in Chunyang school had confirmed Duan Lingtian's strength. He was indeed as monstrous as the rumors said. They did not know or understand the two middle-level godly emperors that Duan Lingtian had killed in the Tianlong clan, but they all knew what kind of person Ma Qihong was. He was the number one person in the younger generation of the Machi family and the young genius of Tunglung province under 10,000 years old. No one was his match. He was also recognized as the number one person in the younger generation of Tunglung province under 10,000 years old. And such a person had been defeated by Duan Lingtian. The sect really has good eyes. In the past, I was a frog at the bottom of a well, looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. I was actually unconvinced by Duan Lingtian. Now that I think about it, it's really laughable. In the Seven Prefectures Feast 10 years later, Duan Lingtian will definitely shine and win glory for our Chunyang school. There's hope for him to be in the top 3. Maybe he can fight for first place? I remember that the first place in the Seven Prefectures Feast will have 4 places to enter that place. The entire Chunyang school was in a celebratory mood. To them, the news from the Seven Kills Valley was definitely good news. Whether it was Duan Lingtian defeating Ma Qihong or Zhen Pingfan obtaining Ma Qiju's high soul divine weapon, it was great news. However, compared to Chunyang school, the atmosphere in the Machi family was gloomy and gloomy. The news from the Seven Kills Valley had also spread. The high soul divine weapon of the Machi family's gold seat elder, Ma Qiju, was lost. It was lost by Ma Qihong. Ma Qihong, the pride of the Machi family, was defeated by someone. They would not feel anything if the person who defeated Ma Qihong was above 10,000 years old. However, the person who defeated Ma Qihong was also below 10,000 years old like Ma Qihong. Moreover, he was not even 3,000 years old. His age was not even half of Ma Qihong's age. He used a high soul divine weapon to bet 100 king-grade divine pills. Is there something wrong with Ma Qihong's head? Lower your voice. Don't let anyone hear you. Perhaps Ma Qihong thinks he's going to win so he doesn't care about the wager. Humph. No matter what, he's the one who lost the high soul divine weapon. If he doesn't make it to the top 3 in the Seven Prefectures Grand Banquet in 10 years, I'm afraid our Machi family won't be able to recoup our losses. It shouldn't be a problem for him to make it to the top 3, right? It shouldn't be a problem? Let's not talk about the other 6 prefectures. Just the Tunglung province alone has Duan Lingtian who can defeat him. Moreover, a variable like Duan Lingtian has appeared in our Tunglung province. Do you think it's impossible for the other prefectures to appear as well? There were many people in the Machi family who blamed Ma Qihong. Naturally, there were also people who blamed Ma Qiju. After all, he was the leader of the group. Without his approval, it would have been impossible for Ma Qihong and Duan Lingtian to have a duel. However, there were not many people who dared to say anything about Ma Qiju. No matter what, Ma Qiju was the golden seat elder of the Machi family. He was also a medium god emperor. Moreover, Ma Qiju was the one who suffered the greatest loss this time. Not only did he lose the high soul divine weapon, but his great-grandson whom he was so proud of had also suffered a great loss. At this moment, there were also people who were opposed to Ma Qiju in the Machi family who were gloating. Naturally, they could only gloat secretly. If anyone dared to gloat openly, even if it was only against Ma Qiju and his great-grandson, they would be ostracized by the others. After all, they were from the same family. Patriarch, I'll make a trip to the Seven Kills Valley to see if there's any hope of retrieving the high soul divine weapon from Ma Qiju. An old man said to a middle-aged man in the depths of the Machi family. When the middle-aged man heard this, he fell silent for a moment before he said, "Just do your best. Don't force it. Jin Yunfeng is not a pushover." Understood. The old man replied before he stepped into the air and left the Machi family. He took out a God Emperor grade flying ship and rushed to the Seven Kills Valley at his fastest speed. Although the other 3 forces with God Emperor grade flying ship in Tunglung province were not as overjoyed as the Chunyang school and the Machi family, they were still shocked when the news spread. There's a second person in Tunglung province who has mastered the 4 Tao of heaven, earth, and heaven. He has also mastered the sword Tao. Moreover, he's also from the Chunyang school. Before Duan Lingtian displayed the sword Tao, the only person in the entire Tunglung province who had truly mastered the 4 Tao of heaven, earth, and heaven was Yi Chenfeng from the Chunyang school. Other than him there was no one else. However, there were other people who had mastered the embryonic form of the four Tao of heaven, earth, and heaven. However, the embryonic form of the four Tao of heaven and earth was completely different from the four Tao of heaven and earth. It was like the difference between an infant and an adult. Duan Lingtian. It was also on this day that Duan Lingtian had truly stepped onto the stage of Tunglung province. No one looked down on him because of his young age and low cultivation base. As the person involved, Duan Lingtian was unaware of all this. Moreover, he did not think too much about it. Currently, he was purchasing some items at the Seven Kills Valley's trading meet. Because he had helped Zhen Pingfan obtain a high-grade half-soul god weapon, Zhen Pingfan had directly announced that he would pay for all the transactions Duan Lingtian would make in the coming days. As long as it was within his means, he would buy everything for Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian originally wanted to decline, but he had underestimated Zhen Pingfan's persistence. In the end, when he saw that Zhen Pingfan was about to turn hostile, Duan Lingtian did not know what to say. However, even with Zhen Pingfan's promise, even though the young disciples from the Chunyang school were envious of him, he did not buy or exchange things recklessly. Whether it was the things he bought or exchanged, they were all things that he needed. Of course, during this process Duan Lingtian not only bought some things that he needed, but also some things that his family could use. However, he did not let Zhen Pingfan pay for this part. No matter how Zhen Pingfan insisted, Duan Lingtian did not budge. In the end, Zhen Pingfan could only take a step back. The people from the Mochi family won't be coming to the trade fair, right? After a day, Duan Lingtian had basically gotten all the things that he needed from the other three forces. Before the trade fair ended that day, Duan Lingtian asked Zhen Pingfan, "I wanted to see if they had the things that I needed so I could do some business with them and comfort them." As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, Zhen Pingfan rolled his eyes at him. "You rascal, are you tired of living? I have to remind you that Mochi Ju is currently in a fit of anger. It's best that you don't say such words in front of him. Otherwise, even if he doesn't dare to kill you, it's still possible that he'll injure you and compensate you with something." As soon as Zhen Pingfan said this, Duan Lingtian was immediately jolted awake. He could not be too arrogant. Right now he could only bully a kid like Mochi Hong. An old man like Mochi Ju could crush him with one finger. "They'll be here tomorrow." Zhen Pingfan continued to say, "Many of them are in a bad mood today. They'll be fine after resting for a while. They'll definitely be here tomorrow." The trade fair this time is in preparation for the 7 prefectures' grand banquet 10 years later. The 5 major forces have their own advantages and disadvantages. If the Mochi family doesn't come, it'll be their loss. Even if Mochi Ju feels embarrassed and doesn't want to come, he has no choice but to come. If he doesn't come, perhaps no one from the Mochi family can do anything to him. However, he'll definitely lose the support of the people. He's preparing to push his grandson to become the next patriarch of the Mochi family. It's impossible for him to ignore the support of the people. It was just as Zhen Pingfan had said. On the first day of the trade fair, the people from the Mochi family left and did not return. However, on the second day the people from the Mochi family came. Moreover, it was as though they had forgotten what had happened the day before. All of them quietly made deals with the people from the 4 major forces including the Chunyang school. Even when Duan Lingtian bought some things from the people from the Mochi family, the people from the Mochi family did not seem to have any intention of targeting him. Why does it feel like this is the calm before the storm? Duan Lingtian could not help but think about it. Chapter 3991. To make sure, Duan Lingtian even went to Mochi Ju, the golden seat elder of the Mochi family, to make a deal with him. He symbolically obtained something from Mochi Ju. However, Duan Lingtian discovered that the Mochi family elder who was extremely hostile to him yesterday was acting as though nothing had happened. Although there was no smile on his face and he seemed indifferent, there was no longer any hostility in his eyes. "Elder Zhen." Duan Lingtian looked for Zhen Pingfan again. "I feel that something is amiss. The people from the Mochi family, especially Mochi Ju, are acting very strangely." In his opinion, the people from the Mochi family were fine since this matter did not concern them. However, as the people involved, Mochi Ju and Mochi Hong, under normal circumstances, it was impossible for them to act as though nothing had happened the next day. "There's nothing strange about it." Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Zhen Pingfan smiled faintly. After they returned yesterday, they had already vented their frustrations. Mochi Hong has lived for almost 10,000 years, let alone Mochi Ju. Don't tell me that he still hasn't figured out that spilled water can't be undone? What's the point of being as unresigned and arrogant as yesterday? If you go overboard in front of others and something happens to you in the future, won't Machiju be worried that Chunyang School will target him? It's better for him to act as though nothing has happened and wait for an opportunity to kill you in one strike. At that time, even if Chunyang School suspects him, they won't be able to stand their ground if they don't have any evidence. After all, he acted as though he had buried the hatchet with you earlier, Zhen Pingfan said. Upon hearing this, Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not think of it that way. His instincts told him that the half-soul high-grade divine weapon was very important to Machiju. It might even be more important than his wife. Now that he and Zhen Pingfan had tricked him, he would definitely not be nice to them. He did not expect Machiju to be so patient. Pretending to bury the hatchet, he might stab you in the back at any time. It seems like I really have to be careful, Duan Lingtian murmured. In fact, Duan Lingtian could understand Machiju's intentions. After all, he had encountered many ruthless people throughout his journey from the mundane plains to this day. However, as time passed, he had forgotten about it. Right now, he was fully focused on increasing his strength and the 7 prefectures' grand banquet. Therefore, when he saw Machiju acting as though nothing had happened, he didn't think too much about it. Now, after listening to Zhen Pingfan's explanation, he suddenly understood. Of course, he wouldn't be careless even if Machiju didn't make him feel any hostility towards him today. After all, he'd experienced too many schemes since he'd come all the way here from the mundane plains. The human heart is unpredictable and impossible to guard against. In this kind of situation, before he had the strength, he would hide in the abyss. Once he had the strength, he would kill the other party to prevent future troubles. Along the way he had done the same. Especially after arriving at the mystic Handle land in the realm of gods, he felt as though he was treading on thin ice. It was just like when he was in the Linghu family. He had to sneak out to refine a peak divine pill. He was worried that the hidden Fog Sect's people or even the Tianlong clan's inner sect elder, Kuang Tianjing, would make a move on him after learning that he had left. At that time, once he was targeted, he would be finished. A few days of the trade fair passed in the blink of an eye. During this trade fair, Duan Lingtian had purchased many things. Of course, most of the valuable things were exchanged for by Zhen Pingfan using divine crystals. As for himself, he didn't pay much. Elder Zhen, when are we leaving? On the last day of the trade fair, Duan Lingtian sent a voice transmission to Zhen Pingfan on the way back to Chunyang School's temporary residence in the 7 Kills Valley. At this time, it wasn't difficult for Duan Lingtian to see that the leaders of the other branches of Chunyang School would occasionally look at Machiju, the leader of the Machi family who was not far away, returning to their temporary residence in the 7 Kills Valley. Their eyes were filled with dread. Clearly, everyone was under pressure. After all this time, Chunyang School had cheated Machiju of half a soul high-grade divine artifact. Although they were on the same side and on the surface they would say that it was a fair bet, but in their hearts they still felt that it was a scam. From Zhen Pingfan's initial provocation to Duan Lingtian's cooperation, Duan Lingtian's pretending to be tough on the outside and nervous on the inside, to confuse Machiju and his grandson. All of this was a trap that the two of them had dug for Machiju. In the end, Machiju, the golden seat elder of the Machi family and an intermediate god emperor, had been cheated by them. If they had been cheated, they would not have let the matter rest. Therefore, 2 days ago, they had communicated with Zhen Pingfan via voice transmission that they would only return after the people from the Machi family had left. Zhen Pingfan had also agreed to their request to reassure them. In fact, Zhen Pingfan felt that it was unlikely that Machiju would do something to them on their way back. Moreover, Machiju would not be able to catch up with them even if they took the God Emperor grade spaceship back. However, it was always better to be careful. I've already discussed this with senior brother Yi Tong and the others. We'll leave after the people from the Machi family leave. Zhen Pingfan replied to Duan Lingtian's question. Duan Lingtian nodded when he heard this. This was the best choice. After all, no one knew if Machiju would act out of desperation when they left the 7 Kills Valley. Machiju might not be able to kill them, but there was a high chance that he would be able to snatch back the half-soul high-grade divine artifact. After all, that was a half-soul high-grade divine artifact that he had spent a lot of effort to nurture. Of course, Duan Lingtian did not feel any pressure when it came to snatching Machiju's half-soul high-grade divine artifact. This was because when Zhen Pingfan had told him that Machiju had once killed a prodigy from Yunfeng's bloodline in a duel that did not involve life and death. That prodigy was one of Zhen Pingfan's senior brothers. If he had not died, he would have been a lesser god emperor at the very least. Machiju could have spared his life at first. However, he still killed him in the end. Of course, Duan Lingtian knew that Zhen Pingfan had told him this because he wanted to tell him that there was no need to feel any pressure when it came to snatching Machiju's things. Machiju was not a good person to begin with. Elder Zhen. Duan Lingtian was silent for a moment before he said, I think that we should inform the sect and get a medium god emperor expert to come and take us back. Perhaps if Elder Yunfeng is free we can ask him to come over? Duan Lingtian said worriedly. As the saying went, it's better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, this should not be too troublesome. Therefore Duan Lingtian suggested this. However, to Duan Lingtian's surprise, Zhen Pingfan laughed when he heard the reminder through voice transmission. Duan Lingtian, you're really careful. My father has arrived. He's waiting for us outside the Seven Kills Valley. He'll appear after we leave the Seven Kills Valley and follow us back. Zhen Pingfan said. Elder Yunfeng is here? Duan Lingtian felt relieved when he heard Zhen Pingfan say that Zhen Yunfeng was here. His eyes lit up. Why didn't he come in directly? He's too lazy to greet the people in the Seven Kills Valley. Zhen Pingfan said helplessly. Since Elder Yunfeng is here, we don't have to wait for the people from the Mochi clan to leave, right? It doesn't seem like a big deal if we leave now. With Elder Yunfeng around, we don't have to worry about Machiju playing tricks. Duan Lingtian said. It's fine. We won't have to wait for long. Zhen Pingfan said, moreover this is Yi Tong's suggestion. I've already agreed to it. My father arrived late last night, but I haven't told them about it yet. I'll give them a surprise when they see my father. Duan Lingtian felt relieved after he spoke with Zhen Pingfan. Since Zhen Yunfeng was here, what was there to worry about? Zhen Yunfeng was much stronger than Machiju. Moreover, Machiju had lost half of his sole prominent divine weapon. His strength had been greatly reduced. The people from the Machi clan left early in the morning the next day in a hurry. About 2 hours after the people from the Mochi clan left, Duan Lingtian received a message from Zhen Pingfan. Duan Lingtian, the people from the Mochi clan have left for 2 hours. It's time for us to leave as well. After receiving the message, Duan Lingtian left his residence. When he came out, he saw a group of people from the Chunyang school gathering together. Many of them had just left their residences like him. Junior brother Zhen, why don't we ask the intermediate god emperors from the Seven Kills Valley to send us to the entrance? At this moment, Elder Jingsu from the Chunyang school's tyrannical saber faction looked at Zhen Pingfan and suggested, I'm afraid the people from the Mochi clan are hiding at the entrance. As for the Seven Kills Valley's encampment, due to the great array protecting the Seven Kills Valley, we can't use God Emperor grade spaceships to fly out. As soon as Elder Jingsu from the tyrannical saber faction spoke, several other leaders from the other factions chimed in one after another. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Zhen Pingfan shook his head and smiled. My father has arrived. Now, let's meet him outside the Seven Kills Valley's encampment. Zhen Pingfan's words were no doubt shocking. As soon as he finished speaking, the eyes of the people from the Chunyang school present lit up. Even those who originally had worried expressions on their faces were no longer worried. Since Martial Uncle Zhen is here, there's naturally no need to seek the protection of the experts from the Seven Kills Valley. Elder Jingsu from the tyrannical saber faction smiled brightly. At the same time, he looked at Zhen Pingfan helplessly. Junior brother Zhen, you should have told us that Martial Uncle Zhen is here. I've been worried. The leaders of the other branches all had bitter smiles on their faces. If they had known that the person from Yunfeng's faction was here, they wouldn't have had to worry at all. Let's go. Duan Lingtian and a group of people from the Chunyang school left the Seven Kills Valley's encampment under Zhen Pingfan's lead. As soon as they left, they saw Zhen Yunfeng. Everyone couldn't help but salute Zhen Yunfeng respectfully. After that, they didn't take separate spaceships. Instead, they took Zhen Pingfan's spaceship and returned to the Chunyang school. Even though it was crowded, no one complained. This return trip might not be peaceful. Chapter 3992. Zhen Pingfan's God Emperor grade spaceship was actually very spacious. Even though all the people from Chunyang school who came to the Seven Kills Valley to participate in the trading meet were in the spaceship, it was not crowded at all. Inside the spaceship, Zhen Yunfeng nodded at Duan Lingtian and smiled faintly. Then, he stood with his hands clasped behind his back as he scanned the mirror image of the surroundings. The mirror image showed the situation outside the spaceship. Now that the spaceship had just accelerated, even Duan Lingtian could clearly see the situation outside the spaceship through the mirror image of the surroundings. However, when the spaceship accelerated to a certain extent, it was difficult for him to clearly see the situation outside. After a while it was completely white. All he could see was white fog that kept retreating. The white fog seemed to have a life of its own as it kept moving backward. Due to Zhen Yunfeng's arrival, the other people from Chunyang school were no longer worried. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and chatted in low voices. Father, now that my God Emperor grade spaceship has accelerated to the speed of a high-level God Emperor, Machiju won't be able to catch up to us even if he wants to. Zhen Pingfan stood beside Zhen Yunfeng and said to him with a smile. Don't celebrate too early. Zhen Yunfeng shook his head and said, don't forget that the Machi clan also has an array disk that can interfere with the operation of a God Emperor grade spaceship. As long as the speed-limiting divine array in the array disk is activated, your spaceship won't be able to escape. I know that. When Zhen Pingfan heard this, he did not seem to care. However, as far as I know, the speed-limiting array disk is not in Machiju's hands. It's in the hands of the clan leader of the Machi clan. As for Machiju, it's impossible for him to have brought the speed-limiting array disk without knowing beforehand, right? Zhen Pingfan did not seem to care. Zhen Pingfan snorted when he heard this. If I can come, why can't the Machi clan send someone? Are you sure no one from the Machi clan will send the speed-limiting array disk to Machiju? When Zhen Pingfan heard this, his expression froze for a moment. Then he forced a smile and said, even if you send the speed limit array disk here, so what? With you around, not to mention that Machiju doesn't have half a soul high-grade divine artifact, even if he does, he won't dare to act wildly. From his words, it was clear that he was very confident in his father, Zhen Yunfeng. This time, Zhen Yunfeng did not respond to Zhen Pingfan, but his brows were slightly knitted together. No one knew what he was thinking. Duanling Tian was standing not far away, so he heard the conversation between the father and son of the Zhen family. Speed limit array disk? Out of curiosity, Duanling Tian could not help but ask Zhen Pingfan. When Zhen Pingfan saw that his father was ignoring him, he began to feel bored. Facing Duanling Tian's question, he began to patiently explain. As the name suggests, the speed restriction disk array is a disk array that contains the speed restriction divine array. Once the speed restriction divine array is activated, it can slow down everything moving at high speed, including cultivators like us. However, a disk array that contains the speed restriction divine array is extremely precious. In the entire Tunglung province, I'm afraid that only the top 5 Emperor God forces have one. For example, the Machi clan only has one speed restriction disk array. Our Chunyang school on the other hand has 2. As soon as Zhen Pingfan finished speaking, Duanling Tian also learned what the speed restriction disk array was. It was a disk array that contained the speed restriction divine array. Duanling Tian had heard of the speed restriction divine array before. He knew that it was a formation that could be set up in advance. Once someone was lured in, it would activate to limit the speed of that person. This formation was mostly used for traps to limit the speed of the target and prevent them from escaping. The person who activated the formation would not be affected by the formation's speed restriction. I really didn't expect that such a formation could be inscribed on a disk array. Duanling Tian could not help but sigh. Zhen Pingfan continued, this formation is actually not a very advanced formation. However, due to its uniqueness, a formation disk made of ordinary materials is not enough to contain it. To inscribe such a formation disk array, the materials used to inscribe the formation disk array are extremely important and precious. At the very least, we don't have such high-grade materials in our Tunglung province. The speed restriction disk array of the top 5 Emperor God forces in Tunglung province is basically obtained from the outside. Furthermore, we have to pay a huge price to obtain it. Zhen Pingfan explained. Duanling Tian suddenly understood. However, even if someone from the Machi clan gave Machiju a speed restriction disk array, Machiju won't be able to gain anything by stopping us. Perhaps he will turn around and run when he sees my father. Zhen Pingfan said disdainfully. Elder Zhen. Duanling Tian glanced at Zhen Yunfeng before he said in a low voice, Elder Yunfeng said that if he can come, the people from the Machi clan can come as well. Is it possible that the person from the Machi clan will be a middle-level God Emperor? As soon as Duanling Tian said this, Zhen Pingfan's expression changed. He looked at his father who had a solemn expression on his face and his heart skipped a beat. Father, are you worried about this as well? That's true. This time Machiju lost half of his soul high-grade divine weapon. Not only is Machi unwilling to accept this, but the Machi clan is also unwilling to accept this. In order to help Machiju regain half of his soul high-grade divine weapon, the Machi clan might really send a middle-level God Emperor expert. As soon as Zhen Pingfan finished speaking, boom, rumble. A series of explosions rang from outside. In the next instant, Duan Ling Tian and the others in the Divine Emperor grade flying ship felt as though they were being pulled forward by something. This was the same feeling as when Duan Ling Tian was on Earth in his previous life when the bus suddenly came to a halt. Duan Ling Tian's expression changed. Speed is being restricted? In the next instant, Duan Ling Tian saw the expressions of Zhen Yunfeng and his father turn extremely solemn. As for the rest of the people from Chunyang School, the group of youngsters was stunned. They had no idea what was going on. As for the others, they frowned. Is it a speed restriction array? Machi Ju set up a speed restriction array to stop us on our way back. A speed restriction array can't be set up in just a few days, right? Could it be an array disk with a speed limiting array? Isn't that thing in the hands of the current patriarch of the Machi clan? Just as the leaders of the various branches of Chunyang School were discussing among themselves, Zhen Yunfeng's indifferent voice rang in their ears. Other than Zhen Pingfan, the rest of you listen to my orders later. Take Yi Tong's God Emperor level flying ship and return to the sect first. Almost at the same time, Zhen Pingfan's voice rang out. Be careful. I'm going to put away the God Emperor level flying ship. As soon as Zhen Pingfan finished speaking, everyone felt the ground beneath their feet become empty. Then they hurriedly circulated the divine power in their bodies and hovered in the air. At this time, everyone, including Duan Ling Tian, realized that they were in the air above a desert. There was no one around. The only thing they could see were two figures standing in the void not far away. They were two old men. One of them was not unfamiliar to Duan Ling Tian and the others. It was the Golden Seat Elder of the Machi clan, Machi Hong. As for the other person, Duan Ling Tian did not recognize him. However, when he saw him standing side by side with Machi Hong, it was not difficult for him to guess his identity. He was most likely a Golden Seat Elder of the Machi clan. Even if he was not, he was definitely a medium Emperor God expert from the Machi clan. Machi Wu Ming, Machi Ju, what is the meaning of this? Zhen Yunfeng stood in front of the group of people from Chunyang School. He stared coldly at the two people in front of him as he questioned them in a deep voice. At this moment, Zhen Yunfeng's expression was extremely ugly. How could it not be ugly? They had suddenly been stopped and imprisoned in a speed restriction array. Any normal person would not be in a good mood. Zhen Yunfeng. Machi Ju did not say anything. However, the old man beside him, who was the Golden Seat Elder of the Machi clan, Machi Wu Ming, spoke up unhurriedly. You should know why we stopped you. At this time you don't have to play dumb, right? Machi Wu Ming was one of the stronger medium emperor gods in the Machi clan. He was not someone Machi Ju, who had become a medium emperor god in recent years, could compare to. His strength was not inferior to Zhen Yunfeng's. It was also because of this that when Zhen Yunfeng looked at him, there was a hint of fear in the depths of his eyes. Machi Wu Ming. Zhen Yunfeng's tone was cold. Machi Ju lost his divine weapon in a fair and square battle. Are you going to interfere and take it back by force? Are you going to snatch it by force? As he spoke, Zhen Yunfeng's tone became colder and colder. There was even a cold light in his eyes. Elder Zhen Yunfeng, you are exaggerating. Machi Wu Ming shook his head gently. The battle was witnessed by the Valley Master of the Seven Kills Valley, Wei Chun Dao. Naturally there is no problem. I just want to say that the wager of 100 king-grade divine pills is not worth the wager of 1/2 soul high-grade divine weapon. I'm sure Elder Zhen Yunfeng won't deny this, right? Machi Wu Ming looked at Zhen Yunfeng deeply. What a joke. Zhen Yunfeng sneered. Before the battle, the wager was clearly stated. Now that the battle is over and you've lost, you're saying the wager is not worth the wager? Is there such a good thing in the world? Zhen Yunfeng was so angry that he laughed. When Machi Wu Ming heard Zhen Yunfeng's words, he only frowned slightly. He continued to say, Elder Zhen Yunfeng, you also have a half-soul high-grade divine weapon. You should know how difficult it is to nurture a half-soul high-grade divine weapon. If Machi Ju loses it, he will definitely die under the heavenly tribulation within 5,000 years. Machi Wu Ming's tone became slightly gloomy as he spoke. The Machi clan has no intention of making an enemy out of Chunyang School. As long as you leave Machi Ju's half-soul high-grade divine weapon behind, the Machi clan will definitely return 200 king-grade divine pills to Chunyang School within 100 years. If Chunyang School is willing to accept the divine crystals, the Machi clan will be able to complete the payment as soon as possible. Machi Wu Ming said. Impossible. As soon as Machi Wu Ming's words left his mouth, Zhen Yunfeng made his stance clear. His tone left no room for negotiation. Zhen Yunfeng. At this moment, Ma Qiju, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Since we can't come to an agreement, we have no choice but to offend you. Chapter 3993. As soon as Ma Qiju finished speaking, several figures appeared in the void in the distance. They were not unfamiliar to Duan Lingtian and the others. Duan Lingtian had an impression of these people. They were the members of the Machi family who had come to the Seven Kills Valley to participate in the trade fair. Moreover, they were all experts of the older generation. As for the younger generation, including Machi Hong, none of them had appeared. In fact, one of the experts of the older generation was not present as well. He had probably left with the younger generation. As for the others, they stayed behind to cooperate with Machi Wuming and Machi Ju. In just a short while, the group of experts from the Machi family had surrounded Duan Lingtian and the others from the Chunyang school. At this moment, Duan Lingtian could feel that the pressure on him had disappeared. It was obvious that the effect of the speed-limiting divine array had passed. Every time the speed-limiting divine array was activated, it would consume a lot of energy. If it was a temporary speed-limiting divine array, it would be completely destroyed not long after it was activated. If one wanted to activate it again, they would have to set it up again. As for the speed-limiting divine array that was inscribed on the disk array, although it would not disappear, it would need time to recover after it was activated before it could be activated again. This was because whether it was setting up the speed-limiting divine array or inscribing the speed-limiting divine array, it would require time to recover after it was activated. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Upon hearing Machi Ju's blunt words and seeing the Machi family's stance, the expressions of most of the people from the Chunyang school changed. This was especially true for the younger generation such as Lan Shilin and the others. Their expressions were extremely ugly. Now, even if they wanted to leave, they might not be able to. If there was anyone among the younger generation who was relatively calm, it would be Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian was calm because he knew that even if they were to fight, the Machi family would not dare to kill anyone. Their goal was only to obtain the upper soul grade divine artifact. Once they killed someone, the matter would be blown out of proportion. Of course, not daring to kill didn't mean that they didn't dare to hurt people. At most, after hurting people, they would apologize and give some compensation. This way, it would be difficult for Chunyang school to fall out with the Machi family. After all, there were too many things to consider. Although the Machi family's overall strength was not as good as Chunyang school, if Chunyang school really fought to the death with the Machi family, Chunyang school would probably decline even if they could destroy the Machi family. At that time, the other three forces would benefit. Facing the encirclement of the Machi family, Zhen Yunfeng suddenly let out a cold snort. His eyes emitted a chilling light as he stared at Machi Wuming. Machi Wuming, is this also your intention? Machi Wuming did not answer Zhen Yunfeng directly. Instead, he shook his head and sighed. Zhen Yunfeng, where it's possible to make mistakes, one should spare them. Even if you give that upper soul grade divine artifact to your son, Zhen Pingfan, it won't be of much help to him. Zhen Pingfan is still young. After breaking through to the intermediate God Emperor stage, he'll have plenty of time to nurture his own upper soul grade divine artifact. As for Machi Ju, if he doesn't have the upper soul grade divine artifact, it's a conservative estimate that he'll die under the heavenly tribulation within 5,000 years. He might not even be able to withstand the third heavenly tribulation. Up until now, Machi Wuming was still playing the emotional card. However, Zhen Yunfeng did not fall for it. There's no need to tell me this. Are we the ones who forced Machi Ju to bet on an upper soul grade divine artifact? If he didn't agree, who could have forced him to use his upper soul grade divine artifact as a wager? Well, it's only because he lost. If he had won, I would have asked you to return the 100 limited king tier divine pills. Would you have done it? Ridiculous. Zhen Yunfeng sneered. Brother Wuming. At this moment, Machi Ju said coldly, I've told you before that it's impossible to reason with Zhen Yunfeng. Let's stick to our plan. Today, if they hand over their upper soul grade divine artifact, we'll be fine. Otherwise, I'm afraid many of you will be injured. If your injuries are serious, it might affect your cultivation. It won't be easy for you to overcome the heavenly tribulation in the next 1,000 years. When Machi Ju reached the end of his sentence, he no longer looked at Zhen Yunfeng. Instead, his gaze swept past the faces of the leaders of the various branches in Chunyang school. Some of their expressions changed drastically. One had to admit that Machi Ju's threat was very effective. Many of the upper echelons of the pure sun sect's branches who had come this time were having a hard time dealing with the recent heavenly tribulations. If they were injured here this time, as long as their injuries were serious, it would really be difficult for them to survive the following heavenly tribulations. However, at the same time, their eyes were filled with anger. The people from the Machi clan had gone too far. It was one thing for them to refuse to admit defeat. How could they do such a thing? Father, the transmission has been cut off. At this moment, Zhen Pingfan said to Zhen Yunfeng in a timely manner, they came prepared. I guessed as much. Zhen Yunfeng nodded indifferently. He did not look surprised at all. However, the others were different. When they heard Zhen Pingfan's words, their expressions changed again. The transmission had been cut off? Did that not mean the news could not be sent out? Not only could they not send a message back to Chunyang School, but they also could not send a message to the Seven Kills Valley to ask for reinforcements? Although the relationship between Chunyang School and the Seven Kills Valley was not better than the relationship between the Mochi clan and the Seven Kills Valley, the witness of the bet was the Valley Master of the Seven Kills Valley. If the people from the Seven Kills Valley knew about this, they would most likely not stand by and do nothing. However, the people from the Mochi clan had cut off their communication with the outside world. Mochi Woming Mochi Ju. Zhen Yunfeng glanced at the two golden seat elders of the Mochi clan. His voice was cold and deep as he said, "Are you going to represent the Mochi clan and declare war on Chunyang School?" Elder Zhen Yunfeng. Mochi Ju said coldly, "Don't try to change the topic. I've made myself very clear just now. We won't kill anyone from Chunyang School. However, if a conflict really breaks out, some losses will be inevitable. I admit that we might not be able to take down the people from Chunyang School. However, don't forget that there are still many young people here. If a fight really breaks out, you have to protect the young people, right? If we're distracted, who do you think will have the upper hand, you or us?" Mochi Ju's words clearly showed that he had nothing to fear. At this moment, even Duan Ling Tian had a frown on his face. The people from the Mochi clan were too domineering. This time, it seemed like they really intended to take back the half-soul prominent god artifact. Moreover, based on the current situation, compromise was the best choice. It was just as Mochi Ju had said. The experts from the older generation were not afraid of the people from the Mochi clan. However, if a conflict broke out, the people from Chunyang School would definitely have to take care of the young disciples. If they were distracted, the people from Chunyang School would definitely be the ones to suffer. Zhen Yunfeng. Mochi Wuming spoke again. It's better to take a step back. Today, as long as you return Mochi Ju's half-soul prominent god artifact to him, both sides will be at peace. What I promised before is still valid. Either you return the 200 peak king-grade divine pills or exchange them for divine crystals. Naturally, the former will take time, but the latter won't. We'll return all the divine crystals to you before the 7 prefectures banquet begins. Although Mochi Wuming's words were vague, it was clear he agreed with Mochi Ju's words. If the people from Chunyang School did not hand over the half-soul prominent god artifact, they would start a war. Elder Zhen Yunfeng. Mochi Ju stared at Zhen Yunfeng and said in a deep voice, "Your strength is indeed above mine. However, Brother Wuming, I'm afraid you don't have the confidence to defeat him, right? It won't be hard for him to restrain you. It won't be hard for me to restrain your son Zhen Pingfan either. Once the other people from the Mochi clan join the battle, we won't be able to guarantee that the little flowers from Chunyang School who haven't stepped out of the greenhouse will not be affected." As Mochi Ju spoke, his gaze swept past Duan Ling Tian, Lan Shilin, and the other young disciples from Chunyang School. His gaze landed on Duan Ling Tian. Just as Zhen Yunfeng's expression turned ugly, Mochi Wuming spoke again. "Zhen Yunfeng, you don't have to feel embarrassed. Today, if you return Mochi Ju's half-soul prominent god artifact to him, the Mochi clan will publicly apologize to Chunyang School. We're even willing to provide Chunyang School with additional cultivation resources." As soon as Mochi Wuming finished speaking, Zhen Yunfeng took a deep breath and looked at him deeply. "Mochi Wuming, is this the Mochi clan's idea or just your and Mochi Ju's idea?" When Mochi Wuming heard this, he was stunned for a moment. Then he said indifferently, "The Mochi clan's patriarch gave me the speed-limiting disc array before I left. What do you think?" Although Mochi Wuming did not reply directly, his words were enough to tell the answer. Good. Very good." Zhen Yunfeng nodded. He was so angry that he smiled. "This is the first time in my life that I, Zhen Yunfeng, have suffered such a loss. In other words, this is also the first time our Chunyang School has suffered such a loss in Tunglung Province. Mochi Ju Mochi Clan, very good. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhen Yunfeng took a deep breath again. He looked at Zhen Pingfan and said, "Lend Machi Ju's half-soul prominent god artifact to him for a few days. Lend it for a while?" When they heard Zhen Yunfeng's words, not only was Zhen Pingfan stunned, but even Machi Wuming and Machi Ju from the Machi clan were stunned. However, after a while the people from the Machi clan laughed in their hearts. They thought Zhen Yunfeng had only said this because he wanted to save face. Although the Machi clan had bullied them today, the Chunyang school would not take this lying down so easily. However, their Machi aristocrat clan was also prepared to apologize. As long as they got the half-soul prominent god artifact back, they would not mind losing face. If they did not get the half-soul prominent god artifact back, the Machi clan would lose a medium god emperor in the next few thousand years. That would be the worst thing that could happen to the Machi clan. Chapter 3994. If it wasn't for the fact that they wanted to protect a medium emperor god, the Machi family wouldn't have openly gone against Chunyang school. Today's matter was destined to cause the Machi aristocratic family to stand on the opposite side of the Pure Sun sect. However, the Machi aristocratic family and the Pure Sun sect were both peak god emperor level forces in the Eastern Ridge Prefecture. They were not afraid of the Pure Sun sect. As for the half-soul high-grade divine artifact, as long as it returned to Machi Ju, the Machi family wouldn't spit out again. Would Chunyang school start a war with the Machi family because of this? The Machi family could be said to have grasped this point perfectly. They could apologize to Chunyang school and give 200 limited king-grade divine pills to Chunyang school. They could do everything they could to give Chunyang school face. Would Chunyang school really fight to the death with the Machi family? It wouldn't do any good for either family to fight to the death. As for the apology and 200 limited king-grade divine pills, it was worth it for the Machi family to give up these things to get back a half-soul high-grade divine artifact and protect a medium emperor god. The Machi family was certain that Chunyang school would settle the matter peacefully. Hence they made such a choice. Borrow it temporarily? Although Machi Wuming and Machi Ju understood the meaning behind Zhen Yunfeng's words, they didn't take it seriously. As long as the half-soul high-grade divine artifact returned to the Machi family, it would be impossible for them to give it away. Unless Chunyang school wanted to shed all pretense of cordiality with the Machi family. Father. Upon hearing Zhen Yunfeng's words, Zhen Pingfan knew that this was the general trend. However, he still couldn't accept it. However, when he saw the unquestionable look in Zhen Yunfeng's eyes, he gritted his teeth and took out the half-soul high-grade divine artifact with an ugly expression. He threw it out casually. As soon as the half-soul high-grade divine artifact appeared in the void, it was summoned back by Machi Ju. Machi Ju held the 7-foot-long spear in his hand. His eyes were a little blurred as though it wasn't a half-soul high-grade divine artifact, but an old lover who had been separated for a long time. Elder Zhen Yunfeng, please excuse me. Machi Wuming didn't continue pestering Zhen Yunfeng when he saw this. He smiled apologetically to Zhen Yunfeng before leaving with the group of Machi clan's experts. On the other hand, the people from Chunyang school did not look too happy. Even Lan Shilin's expression was not looking good right now. The entire Pure Sun sect shared the honor and disgrace of this matter. Father, that Machi Ju and Machi Wuming are simply too excessive. Zhen Pingfan spoke to Zhen Yunfeng through voice transmission after everyone had returned to the God Emperor class flying ship. His tone was filled with unwillingness. Although the others wanted to comfort Zhen Yunfeng, they knew that Zhen Yunfeng was in a bad mood, so they did not disturb him. However, Zhen Pingfan did not have that many concerns. Moreover, he was the one who had lost half a soul of a high-grade divine artifact. Duan Ling Tian stood in a corner of the flying ship with an ugly expression on his face. Although the half-soul high-grade divine artifact no longer belonged to him after he gave it to Zhen Pingfan, and even if Zhen Pingfan lost it, it had nothing to do with him. The favor he owed him for gifting the divine artifact would not disappear. However, when he thought of the Machi clan's people's faces, he still felt irritated. How could the Machi clan be so shameless? Moreover, they had even used the young disciples of Chunyang school to threaten Zhen Yunfeng and the other experts of the Chunyang school's older generation. This was a humiliation to them. Of course, Duan Ling Tian also felt somewhat guilty. After all, he was one of the young disciples who had dragged Zhen Yunfeng and the other experts of the Chunyang school's older generation down with him. The Machi clan. Cold lights flickered within Duan Ling Tian's eyes, and they were icy cold to the extreme. At the same time, Zhen Yunfeng heard Zhen Pingfan's voice transmission and replied in a timely manner. So what if they went overboard? Did you have a better choice under such circumstances? Even if you and I are injured, we don't have to fear the heavenly tribulation in the future. But what about the others? The reason the Machi clan didn't bring any young disciples with them was undoubtedly because they knew the young disciples of Chunyang school would be a burden to us. I have to admit that the Machi clan has made a good move this time, Zhen Yunfeng said. Zhen Yunfeng nodded. Father, Zhen Pingfan was displeased when he heard Zhen Yunfeng praising the Machi clan. However, before he could complain, a cold glint flashed across Zhen Yunfeng's eyes. However, the Machi family will regret this. Zhen Pingfan looked at Zhen Yunfeng and said with a wry smile, Father, I'm afraid this matter will be left unsettled in the end. After the Machi clan snatches back the half-soul high-grade divine artifact, they will definitely publicly apologize to the sect and promise to return 200 limited king-grade divine pills. That's twice the amount of limited king-grade divine pills that Duan Lingtian had bet on. This apology gift is actually quite generous. Given the general trend, it's impossible for the sect to really fight the Machi clan. Zhen Pingfan was very clear about this matter. It was precisely because of this that he was unwilling to accept it. If it were in the past, that would naturally be the case. Zhen Yunfeng said indifferently, however, things are different now. Zhen Pingfan looked at Zhen Yunfeng in confusion. Father, what do you mean by that? Why are things different now? Zhen Yunfeng glanced at him and said indifferently, this time, the Machi family did this because they were sure that the sect wouldn't fall out with them, just like what you said earlier. As for why, I'm sure you know. Although our Pure Sun sect is stronger than their Machi clan, if we were to fight, both sides would definitely suffer. However, what if a high-end combat force that surpasses the Machi clan appears in Chunyang school? At that time, so what if the Machi clan goes crazy? Do they dare to take the risk? When Zhen Yunfeng reached the end of his sentence, the indifference on his face disappeared and was replaced by a sneer. Do you really think I was just trying to save face when I said you lent the half-soul high-quality divine artifact to the Machi clan? I was telling the truth, Zhen Yunfeng said. After hearing his father's voice transmission, Zhen Pingfan thought for a moment. Then a thought flashed through his mind and his eyes lit up. Father, could it be that Martial Uncle Yi is going to succeed? Zhen Pingfan was not a fool. After hearing his father say so much, it was not difficult for him to understand the meaning behind his father's words. A high-end combat force that surpassed the Machi clan. In Chunyang school, it could only be his martial uncle Yi, the ancestor of the hidden sword lineage Yi Qinfeng. In the past, Yi Qinfeng might not have had such strength. However, once the half-soul high-quality divine artifact was successfully nurtured and became a full-soul high-quality divine artifact, he might even be able to kill an ordinary high-level god emperor. The reason why the Machi clan dared to come and snatch the half-soul high-quality divine artifact was because they were on par with the high-end combat force of Chunyang school. Once the high-end combat force produced a difference, it would be a completely different story. To put it bluntly, if such a high-end combat force appeared in the Machi clan, Chunyang school could only grit their teeth and swallow the pain even if the Machi clan did not pay a price. However, the appearance of Chunyang school was a completely different story. You're not that stupid after all. Zhen Yunfeng shook his head and said, before I came out, he sent me a message to tell me the good news. The full-soul high-quality divine artifact has been completed, and he's now familiarizing himself with it. At first, he told me that he hadn't thought of how to test the sword yet. Now, someone has delivered himself to his door. It's a good opportunity for him to test the sword. As soon as Zhen Yunfeng said this, Zhen Pingfan's eyes lit up. His face trembled slightly due to his excitement. When the time comes, I'll go to the Machi clan with Martial Uncle Yi. I'd like to see what kind of expression Machi Wuming, Machi Ju, and the rest of the Machi clan will have. The rest of the journey was uneventful. Duan Lingtian and the others returned to Chunyang school without a hitch. Since Zhen Yunfeng did not let the others spread the news of the Machi clan snatching the half-soul high-quality divine artifact, the whole Chunyang school was filled with voices condemning the Machi clan as soon as Duan Lingtian and the others returned to Chunyang school. The Machi clan's people are too shameless. Damn it. Why are those Machi clan's people so unwilling to admit defeat? I have a friend in the Seven Kills Valley. I just confirmed with him that the half-soul high-quality divine artifact of Elder Zhen Pingfan was won by Duan Lingtian from Machi Ju. Machi Ju and Machi Wuming are the golden seat elders of the Machi clan in vain. They have no respect for their elders. I curse them to be struck to death by the heavenly tribulation as soon as possible. At this moment, the voices of the Chunyang school's people were united like never before. Even if Duan Lingtian went out, He could hear a group of elders and disciples from the same branch talking about the Mochi clan's shamelessness everywhere on Yunfeng Island. Duan Lingtian. On the second day after returning, Duan Lingtian received a message from Zhen Pingfan. Elder Zhen? Duan Lingtian was puzzled. Why was Elder Zhen looking for him at this time? Martial Uncle Yi wants me to ask you if you want to go to the Mochi clan with us? Zhen Pingfan said. Elder Yi? Duan Lingtian knew that the Elder Yi that Zhen Pingfan mentioned was the one from the hidden sword branch. Isn't he nourishing the soul of his divine sword? Has he come out of seclusion? He came out of seclusion a few days ago. Zhen Pingfan replied, recently he's familiarizing himself with his brand new divine sword. If there's nothing else, come with us. We'll broaden your horizons and let you see the power of a high-grade complete soul divine weapon. Zhen Pingfan said with a smile. As soon as Zhen Pingfan said this, Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up. He could not help but sigh inwardly. How could I have forgotten about Elder Yi earlier? Although Duan Lingtian did not communicate with the Zhen father and son on the way back, he could guess the reason why the Mochi clan was so fearless. He also felt that this matter would most likely be left unsettled in the end. However, now that he heard Zhen Pingfan mention Elder Yi and asked him to go with him to the Mochi clan to see the power of a high-grade complete soul divine weapon, was this not a prelude to trouble? Elder Yi was originally acknowledged as the strongest person in Chunyang school. Now that he has a high-grade complete soul divine sword, his strength must be even more terrifying. Perhaps he's no weaker than an ordinary higher god emperor? Chapter 3995. As one of the top 5 forces in Tunglung province, the Mochi clan's base was located in a corner of a vast city. It was near a mountain and by a river. As for this city, it was actually built by the Mochi family themselves. Everything was done to serve the Mochi family. In this city, most of the shops were opened by the Mochi family, and they regularly sold rare items. The subordinates of the Mochi family and the people of other nearby forces would come to this city due to their needs. As time passed, this remote city became the most prosperous city in the surrounding area. This prosperity came from the Mochi clan. This city was called Mochi City. The Mochi clan's base was located in the east of Mochi City. It was close to the mountain range and occupied a vast area. Mochi City was similar to Linghu City that was controlled by the Linghu clan that Duan Lingtian used to live in. However, it was much larger. Linghu City was not located near a mountain and by a river. It was a city that stood on a plain. In the Mochi clan's base, a young man was kneeling in a spacious courtyard in a quiet valley. No matter how the person in front of him tried to persuade him, he did not intend to get up. Young Master Hong, the master said that this matter is not your fault but his. You don't have to do this. An old man dressed like a servant sighed and said, now, the master is refining his superior soul artifact. He won't be coming out of closed-door cultivation for a while. If he finds out that you're kneeling here while he's in closed-door cultivation, he'll ask you to stand up as well. The old man said. I lost the bet, Mochi Hong replied straightforwardly. I'll kneel until the mysterious ancestor comes out of closed-door cultivation and await his punishment. The old man sighed when he saw this. He did not say anything else when he sensed the young man's determination. After a while, the old man glanced inside and said, Master should be coming out of seclusion in a few days. His half-soul high-grade divine artifact hasn't been refined by Zhen Pingfan for his own use. He just needs to refine it a little. Actually, young Master Hong, you really don't have to do this. If you have the time, you might as well cultivate and perform well at the 7 Prefectures banquet. That way Master will be even happier. Hearing the old man's words, Mochi Hong said, My strength has reached a bottleneck, and I can't make a breakthrough in a short period of time. That was it. Mochi Hong knelt in front of his profound ancestor Mochi Ju's room for 7 days and 7 nights. 7 days and 7 nights later, accompanied by the sound of a spear that sounded like the roar of a dragon, the door in front of him opened, and an aged figure walked out with a sword in his hand. After the old man left, he glanced at Mochi Hong indifferently before flying up into the sky. The spear in his hand seemed to have transformed into numerous black pythons that whistled out from his hand. A moment later, the spear left his hand, and black pythons began to circle around his body, moving faster and faster. Before long, the old man's figure was completely shrouded in darkness. Because their speed was too swift, the afterimages of the black pythons converged to form a black light barrier that enveloped the old man's figure within it, and it was airtight. After a short moment, the light barrier instantly poured down, and it seemed to have transformed into a pool of black water that ceaselessly entered the old man's body from all over before vanishing completely. "Congratulations, master." The old servant congratulated respectfully from below. The old man nodded indifferently, and then he looked at Machi Hong, who knelt there and frowned slightly. "What are you kneeling here for instead of cultivating properly at your place? I'm still waiting for you to defeat that Duan Ling Tian during the 7 Prefectures banquet and wash away the humiliation from before." As he finished speaking, the old man's tone seemed to carry slight disappointment that Machi Hong failed to meet his expectations. "Profound ancestor." Machi Hong spoke bitterly. "There's only 10 years until the 7 Prefectures banquet, and it's practically impossible for me to defeat that Duan Ling Tian during the banquet. Even though Duan Ling Tian's strength didn't surpass him by much. However, in just 10 years, even if Duan Ling Tian didn't improve, it was impossible for him to surpass Duan Ling Tian. He couldn't be clearer about his own cultivation situation. What? After failing once, you feel that you're inferior to him and can't catch up to him?" The old man, who was the golden seat elder of the Machi family, Machi Ju, sneered. "Now go back and cultivate properly. Within 3 years, the people sent by the patriarch will probably return. At that time, you'll have the ultimate emperor-level divine pellet that can help you consolidate your cultivation as a high-level divine emperor. As long as you completely consolidate your cultivation as a high-level divine emperor, you might be able to defeat Duan Ling Tian during the 7 Prefectures banquet." Machi Hong's pupils shrank when he heard Machi Ju's words. Ultimate emperor-level divine pellet? Moreover, it was the kind that could help him consolidate his cultivation as a high-level divine emperor? If he really obtained such a divine pellet, and if the medicinal effect was good, it wasn't impossible for him to completely consolidate his cultivation as a high-level divine emperor within 10 years. Once he consolidated his cultivation as a high-level divine emperor, he was very confident that he wouldn't lose to Duan Ling Tian. Perhaps he might even have a chance to win. "Yes, great ancestor." After Machi Hong replied respectfully, he stood up and prepared to return to his residence to cultivate. However, as soon as he rose into the air, his expression changed drastically. "Machi family, how impressive." A soft shout suddenly rang from the sky above the Machi family. It sounded as though it came from the horizon, but it also sounded as though it came from all directions. The voice was not loud, but it was deafening. Following this soft cry was a blazing and dazzling white light. The light descended from the sky and struck the clan protecting great formation of the Machi clan, causing the formation to tremble. However, even with the grand formation's protection, a portion of the energy still drifted to the ground. For a time, those who were stronger in the Machi family were still fine since they could easily withstand the energy. However, those who were weaker were in for a bad time. Those below the Divine Emperor realm who did not have any powerhouses by their side to protect them in time were directly crushed by the energy and died. For a time, blood splattered everywhere in the Machi family's estate. Terrified screams could be heard everywhere. Machi Hong was a high-level Divine Emperor after all. He managed to withstand the energy that descended from the sky. However, his expression was unsightly when he saw his opponent was too powerful. When he attacked, even the Machi family's clan-protecting Grand Array couldn't completely block his attack in time. This voice, it's Yi Qinfeng? Machi Ju's expression changed drastically at this moment. What's the meaning of this? Is he trying to provoke a conflict between our Machi family and the Chunyang school? Is he trying to save face for the Chunyang school? Machi Ju's expression darkened. Moreover, it seems like his strength has improved again? Yi Qinfeng. While Machi Ju's expression was uncertain, a furious voice sounded in the Machi clan's residence. Are you representing yourself or the Pure Sun sect? You should know what it means to attack our Machi family's protective grand formation. Are you trying to start a war with our Machi family? As soon as the voice rang in the air, several figures soared into the sky. Machi Lu Su, tell Machi Ju and Machi Wuming to come out. The voice rang in the air again. It was none other than the person who had said the Machi family was impressive. Machi Lu Su was the clan leader of the Machi family. The person who had spoken earlier was none other than Machi Lu Su. Machi Ju snorted coldly before he soared into the sky. He no longer cared about his great-great-grandson Machi Hong. He was not in the mood to care about Machi Hong at this moment. Machi Hong's expression changed again. In the end, he looked at his great-great-great-grandson Machi Ju's back and hesitated for a moment before he followed after him. 3 figures could be seen hovering in the air above the Machi family's estate. The person in the lead was a young man dressed in a long golden robe with silver trimmings. His face was as fair as jade and his aura was refined. At this moment he was looking down at the Mochi family's estate indifferently. Behind the young man were two other young men. Duan Lingtian, watch martial uncle Yi vent our anger for us today. Zhen Pingfan transmitted his voice to Duan Lingtian with a smile. The corners of Duan Lingtian's mouth twitched when he heard that. At the same time he was shocked by Yi Qinfeng's confidence. The Mochi family was a top god emperor level family in Tunglung province. Based on his words, it seemed as though he did not take them seriously at all. However, if Elder Yi really has a full soul high-grade divine sword, he does indeed have the strength to match his confidence. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. While Duan Lingtian and Zhen Pingfan were communicating via voice transmission, several figures soared into the sky from the Mochi family's estate. In the blink of an eye they gathered in front of Duan Lingtian and the other two. A middle-aged man dressed in a dark green robe stood at the front. Behind him were a dozen old men and a few middle-aged men. Patriarch. After a short while, a figure that Duan Lingtian was familiar with appeared. It was the golden seat elder of the Mochi family, Mochi Ju. After Mochi Ju spoke, Duan Lingtian learned the identity of the middle-aged man dressed in a dark green robe. He was the patriarch of the Mochi family, Mochi Lu Su. Yi Qinfeng, do you think that no one in the Mochi family can defeat you just because your strength has improved? An old voice that was filled with anger sounded. Then, another person that Duan Lingtian recognized appeared. It was the other golden seat elder of the Mochi family, Mochi Ju. After a short while, another old man appeared. This old man was the most inconspicuous one. However, according to Zhen Pingfan's voice transmission, he was the leader of the three golden seat elders of the Mochi family, Mochi Yuning. Mochi Yuning was also the strongest person in the Mochi family. As soon as Mochi Yuning appeared, the people from the Mochi family who arrived first bowed to the old man. Even Mochi Ju and Mochi Wu Ming addressed him respectfully as Uncle Yuning. It was obvious this person was the strongest person in the Mochi family, the leader of the three golden seat elders, and the person with the highest seniority in the Mochi family. He has the highest seniority in the Mochi family. However, he doesn't have many years left to live. It's said that he suffered quite a serious injury during the last heavenly tribulation. Zhen Pingfan's voice entered Duan Lingtian's ears in a timely manner. Chapter 3996. Yi Qinfeng, why are you here? Mochi Yunning asked calmly. His face was very old and his body was very thin. He looked like he would be blown away by a gust of wind as he stood there. He could not feel any emotion from Mochi Yunning during this process. It was unknown if he really did not care about what Yi Qinfeng had done or if he really had a good temper. Elder Yuning. When Yi Qinfeng's gaze landed on Mochi Yuning, his tone softened. You are of the same generation as my teacher. Logically speaking, I should call you martial uncle. Elder Yuning, you should know about what happened outside the Seven Kills Valley not long ago, right? Yi Qinfeng looked deeply at Mochi Yuning as he spoke. Mochi Yuning fell silent when he heard this. Naturally, he knew about this matter. It was impossible for him not to know. If it were him, he would naturally prefer not to take back what he had lost. However, he knew very well what his juniors had done, so he could not blame them. He would not live much longer. If Mochi Ju lost half of his soul-grade divine artifact, he would not live much longer. At that time, the Mochi clan would lose two intermediate god emperors. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to the Mochi clan. Yi Qinfeng. At this time Mochi Wu Ming spoke again. He said coldly, I've already told your senior brother Zhen Yunfeng about this matter. The Mochi clan has also publicly apologized to the Chunyang school for this matter. In addition, we've recently started searching everywhere for the 200 Limit King grade divine pills. We'll definitely send them to the Chunyang school within 100 years. Is the Chunyang school really going to fall out with the Mochi clan because of this? Mochi Wu Ming's eyes gleamed coldly. Yi Qinfeng. At this time Mochi Lu Su, the patriarch of the Mochi clan, spoke as well. His tone was even colder. If you leave now, the Mochi clan will not pursue the matter of you killing so many of our disciples. Elder Wu Ming made a promise to Chunyang school, and the Mochi family will not go back on their word. As soon as Mochi Lu Su said that, many people behind him frowned. They glanced at Yi Qinfeng coldly but didn't say anything. Many of the Mochi clan's disciples that had perished earlier were from their bloodline. However, when they thought about what the Mochi family had done some time ago, it wasn't difficult for them to guess that the family head did this to further extinguish the anger of Chunyang school. They had expected that Chunyang school would come looking for trouble, but they didn't expect that it would be Yi Qinfeng. Now that Yi Qin had retreated, the matter would naturally come to an end. What if I don't? Hearing Machi Lu Su's words, Yi Qinfeng took a deep look at him and asked with a deep meaning. Not retreating? Machi Liu Su's face instantly darkened. That depends on whether you're here today on behalf of Chunyang school or on your own. So what if I'm here on behalf of myself? Yi Qinfeng asked again. This time, before Machi Lu Su could speak, Machi Wuming beat him to it. If you're here on behalf of yourself, you won't be able to leave the Machi family if you don't give us an explanation. Is that so? Yi Qinfeng looked at Machi Wuming with a mocking smile on his face. With just you? Machi Wuming's expression darkened. Naturally, he was no match for Yi Qinfeng. Yi Qinfeng, what are you trying to do? This was the first time Machi Ju spoke. His eyes were filled with hostility and fear as he looked at Yi Qinfeng. What am I trying to do? Yi Qinfeng smiled. Machi Ju, I'm here to look for you and Machi Wuming. Since both of you are here, that's great. Now, return my junior nephew's half-soul high-grade divine weapon to him and kowtow to him 3 times as an apology. Then I won't pursue this matter any further. Yi Qinfeng's words were said casually, without the slightest hint of emotion. Machi Ju's expression changed instantly. Yi Qinfeng, are you humiliating me? So what if I'm humiliating you? Yi Qinfeng said indifferently, since you have the face to take back a divine weapon that you've openly lost, you should have expected this day to come. Looking at your current attitude. Are you unwilling? As Yi Qinfeng spoke, his tone suddenly turned cold. Impossible. Machi Ju said resolutely. Good. Yi Qinfeng smiled. I've been waiting for you to say this. Since that's the case, I, Yi Qinfeng, will test my sword on you today. As soon as Yi Qinfeng finished speaking, his gaze suddenly froze. With a wave of his hand, a sword ray condensed in the air. Then a figure appeared around the sword ray. It was a lifelike black-robed youth. The youth was shrouded in a black robe, and his face couldn't be seen clearly. However, his body emitted a sharp sword intent. In the next instant, Yi Qinfeng moved. The black-robed youth held a sword ray in his hand and fused with Yi Qinfeng. Sword Soul. Almost at the same instant when Yi Qinfeng moved, the expressions of the Machi family's upper echelons changed as they cried out in disbelief. Yi Qinfeng. As for Machi Ju, who was Yi Qinfeng's target, his expression also changed greatly. He hastily took out his half-soul high-grade divine artifact spear. However, just as the spear entered his hand and was about to erupt, he felt a black sword ray flicker before his eyes. In the next instant he felt his consciousness begin to disperse. No, as soon as he opened his mouth, his voice died. Machi Ju, the golden seat elder of the Machi family, a mid-god emperor expert, died in an instant. Whoosh. As if a gust of wind had blown past, Yi Qinfeng appeared before Duan Lingtian and Zhen Pingfan once again. He looked as if nothing had happened, and his expression was as calm as before. Bang! At the same time, Machi Ju's corpse heavily smashed into the ground below. A muffled sound resounded, which was especially ear-piercing in this quiet environment. Yi Qinfeng, you dare to kill the golden seat elder of my Machi family? Machi Wuming's eyes were red as he glared at Yi Qinfeng. It was as if he wanted to eat him alive. As for the patriarch of the Machi family, Machi Liusu's expression was extremely ugly. Yi Qinfeng actually had a full-soul high-grade divine artifact. He was only a mid-god emperor. Normally speaking, wasn't it only possible for a high-god emperor to give birth to a high-grade divine artifact with a complete soul? How was this possible? Thank you, Martial Uncle Yi. After Zhen Pingfan, who was standing beside Duan Lingtian, caught the spear that Yi Qinfeng casually tossed to him, his eyes lit up. At the same time he thanked Yi Qinfeng profusely. The half-soul high-grade divine artifact that was snatched away earlier returned to Zhen Pingfan's hands. I don't mind if you attack me to avenge him. Yi Qinfeng looked at the clamoring Machi Wuming and said indifferently, don't forget that I'm not here to look for Machi Ju. I'm here to look for you, Machi Wuming. Now that he's dead, it's your turn. Yi Qinfeng said. As soon as Yi Qinfeng said those words, Machi Wuming's expression changed greatly. He, who had calmed down, felt a chill run down his spine when he recalled the scene earlier. Now that Yi Qinfeng had a full-soul high-grade divine artifact, his strength was definitely not weaker than an ordinary high-god emperor. Killing Machi Ju was as easy as killing a chicken. Killing him, Machi Wuming, would not be much different. Yi Qinfeng. At this moment, Although there was no lack of lower god emperors among the upper echelons of the Machi family standing behind the patriarch of the Machi family, they were looking at Yi Qinfeng as if they had seen a ghost. Their eyes were filled with terror and fear. Yi Qinfeng had actually produced a full soul high-grade divine artifact. It should be known that even in the past, Yi Qinfeng's strength was not inferior to the number one expert of the Machi family, Golden Seat Elder Machi Yuning. Now that Yi Qinfeng had a full soul high-grade divine artifact, the gap between them could be imagined. Moreover, Yi Qinfeng was in the prime of his life while their Golden Seat Elder Machi Yuning was already in his twilight years. He might not even have fully recovered from the injuries he suffered during the heavenly tribulation. With Yi Qinfeng's current strength, he can already suppress our Machi family by himself? The upper echelons of the Machi family felt their hearts tremble when they thought of this. This was also the reason why the patriarch of the Machi family, Machi Lu Su, did not say anything for a long time after Yi Qinfeng made his move. This was because he did not know what to say anymore. If Yi Qinfeng had said earlier that he was here on behalf of the Chunyang school, he could still question Yi Qinfeng and ask if he was trying to start a war between the Chunyang school and the Machi family. Even if no one in the Machi family could stop Yi Qinfeng, there would still be someone who could escape alive and take revenge on the people of the Chunyang school in the future. Moreover, the Machi family had been rooted in Tunglung province for many years. They had a deep foundation and they had quite a number of experts in the outside world as well. If the Machi family was really destroyed by the Chunyang school would have to think about the consequences. However, Yi Qinfeng said that he was only here on behalf of himself. He was here on behalf of himself, and he had the battle prowess of a high-level god emperor. What else could he say? So powerful. At this moment, Duan Lingtian finally recovered from the shock of seeing Yi Qinfeng make his move. With just one move, he had killed the Golden Seat Elder of the Machi family, Machi Ju. Machi Ju was not a pushover. He was a genuine mid-level god emperor. Even if he was only a small part of the mid-level god emperors in the Machi family, he was still a mid-level god emperor. A lower-level god emperor could not be compared to him. At the very least, Zhen Pingfan, the strongest person below the mid-level god emperor in the Chunyang school, was no match for him. So, the full soul divine sword can display such power in the hands of a mid-level god emperor. Although Duan Lingtian did not see how Yi Qinfeng made his move due to his limited strength, he could still feel the sharp aura coming from Yi Qinfeng's divine sword. Although he also had a full soul divine sword, due to his limited strength, the power it displayed was far inferior to the full soul divine sword in Yi Qinfeng's hands. When Machi Wuming heard Yi Qinfeng say that it was his turn to speak, he thought of Machi Ju's death and broke out in cold sweat. At the same time, he looked at Machi Yuning, who was standing to the side and staring at Yi Qinfeng without saying anything. Chapter 3997. When Yi Qinfeng displayed the high-grade soul divine sword, Machi Wuming knew that no one in the Machi clan was a match for Yi Qinfeng. The reason he asked Machi Yuning for help was because Machi Yuning was the strongest person in the Machi clan. He had the highest seniority in the Machi clan. Secondly, even though Machi Yuning was no match for Yi Qinfeng, he had a high seniority after all. Moreover, he had a good reputation and was highly respected. Therefore Yi Qinfeng might give him some face. Under Machi Wuming's gaze, Machi Yuning, who had been silent all this while, finally looked at Yi Qinfeng and spoke. Yi Qinfeng, Machi Ju's death was his own fault. The Machi clan will not pursue the matter any further. The high-grade soul divine weapon that was lost is lost. The Machi clan is willing to accept the loss. When Machi Yuning said this, although many people in the Machi clan were unwilling to accept it, they knew that this was the only way. If they really did accept it, their Machi clan would probably shed a river of blood today. The current Yi Qinfeng was no longer someone the Machi clan could deal with. However, Machi Yuning was not done yet. He continued, Machi Wuming, as an accomplice, you'll be grounded in the Machi clan for 10,000 years. Otherwise, you'll be at your mercy. Machi Wuming's expression turned ugly when he heard Machi Yuning's words. However, he did not say anything because this was better than death. As an apology, 200 limited king-grade divine pills will be sent to the hidden sword faction of the Chunyang school within 100 years. Machi Yuning paused for a moment before he asked, Are you satisfied with this arrangement? It had to be said that Machi Yuning's 3 points could be said to have made a very big concession. It was not an exaggeration to say that this was a compromise. Upon hearing Machi Yuning's words, Duan Lingtian, who was standing behind Yi Qinfeng, could not help but be surprised. The strongest person in the Machi clan was so easy to talk to? At the same time, he also realized that today's matter would most likely come to an end after Machi Yuning said this. This time, the Machi clan could be said to have tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it. The Machi clan's previous actions can't be considered wrong. However, they didn't expect Elder Yi Qinfeng from our Chunyang school to have a high-grade full-soul divine sword. Duan Lingtian was well aware of this. If Yi Qinfeng had not nurtured the upper-grade divine sword with a complete soul and still possessed the same strength as before, he would not have been able to intimidate the Machi family into making such a concession. Perhaps he might not even be able to retrieve Machi Ju's high-grade half-soul artifact. The strong are respected. On Elder Ye's body, it can be said to be vividly displayed. At this moment, Duan Lingtian's yearning for the path of the strong grew even more fervent under the influence of Yi Qinfeng's actions. What happened next was exactly what Duan Lingtian had expected. Upon hearing Machi Yuning's words, Yi Qinfeng smiled faintly. Since Elder Yuning has said so, I, Yi Qinfeng, am not an unreasonable person. As soon as Yi Qinfeng's words left his mouth, it was not only the people from the Machi clan whose mouths twitched. Even Duan Lingtian and Zhen Pingfan could not help but look at each other in tacit understanding. They could see a strange smile in each other's eyes. If Yi Qinfeng was reasonable, would he be able to directly suppress the Machi clan's protective grand array and kill the Machi clan's disciples who were below the divine emperor realm? If Yi Qinfeng was reasonable, would he be able to kill Machi Ju without giving him any chance to retaliate? Let's do as Elder Yuning says. Yi Qinfeng smiled. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and brought out his celestial emperor-grade spaceship. Then he brought Duan Lingtian and Zhen Pingfan with him and left without saying another word to the people from the Machi clan. After Duan Lingtian and the other two left, although there were many people in the sky above the Machi clan's estate, it was dead silent. Machi Yuning let out a long sigh. All of you should have informed me before making a move. Don't tell me all of you think that I, Machi Yuning, am someone who can't see the big picture? I don't have much time left. It's impossible for me to bring that half-soul prominent divine weapon with me. It's fine if I leave it to Machi Ju. Machi Yuning only learned about this matter after Machi Ju and Machi Wuming snatched the half-soul prominent divine weapon from Zhen Pingfan right under Zhen Yunfeng's nose when he returned to the Machi clan. Due to this reason, although he felt helpless, he could not say anything. After all, he had already offended the Chunyang school. It would be pointless for him to say anything more. Moreover, even if he had a choice in the beginning, he might have chosen to snatch the half-soul prominent divine weapon from Zhen Pingfan after some hesitation, even if it meant offending the Chunyang school. After all, nobody knew that Yi Qinfeng already possessed a half-soul prominent divine sword. Even if he had a half-soul prominent divine weapon, he would not be able to take it away after he died. However, who would not be selfish? In a situation where the Machi aristocrat family was not threatened, he also wanted to leave his half-soul high-grade divine artifact for his grandson who was only a low-level god emperor. Moreover, he still had a chance to break through and become a higher god emperor after the Seven Palaces grand banquet. For this reason he was, naturally, unwilling to give his half-soul prominent divine weapon to Machi Ju. However, if he had known that Yi Qinfeng possessed a half-soul prominent divine sword and knew that he would not be able to become a higher god emperor after the Seven Palaces grand banquet, he would have been more than willing to give his half-soul prominent divine weapon to Machi Ju. However, there were no such things as knowing in this world. It's too late to say anything now. Machi Liusu sighed. The most unexpected thing is that Yi Qinfeng actually has a full-soul upper-grade godly sword. How did he do it? No matter how Yi Qinfeng did it, the Machi clan had no choice but to admit defeat this time. No one would have thought that the #1 expert of the Chunyang school would possess a half-soul prominent divine sword. His strength was no weaker than some higher god emperors. Wuming. Machi Yuning looked at Machi Wuming and said with a solemn expression, I said those things just now to protect you. I hope you can understand. Uncle Yuning, I can understand. Machi Wuming nodded solemnly. To me, it's already a great blessing that I didn't die under Yi Qinfeng's sword. It's also good that I don't leave the clan. From today onwards, I'll focus all my attention on cultivation and strive to become a higher god emperor. Machi Yuning nodded in satisfaction when he heard this. Ancestor. At this moment, an unexpected figure appeared not far in front of Machi Yuning and the others. Machi Hong? The person who suddenly appeared was none other than Machi Ju's great-great-grandson, Machi Hong. He was also the #1 expert of the Machi clan's younger generation. Machi Hong was the pride of the Machi clan. Even when Machi Hong lost Machi Ju's half-soul prominent divine weapon, not many blamed him. After all, who hadn't been young and frivolous? What they blamed was Machiju for not taking good care of his half-soul prominent divine weapon. Little Hong, you saw it all? Although Machi Hong's expression was calm as if nothing had happened, Machi Lu Su, the patriarch of the Machi clan, could still feel the murderous aura in his body. However, Machi Hong was currently looking at Machi Lu Su and Machi Yuning with a solemn expression. Two old ancestors, if I enter the top 3 in the 7 Mansions Grand Banquet this time around, I'll be able to obtain 3 spots. But now, Ancestor Wuming is under house arrest and can't leave. Therefore, he won't be able to obtain one of the quotas. Therefore, if I enter the top 3, apart from the 2 quotas that will be given to the 2 ancestors, I hope that the remaining quota will be given to someone who can help me kill Yi Qinfeng. Of course, 2 ancestors, you can also make the other party swear a heart demon blood oath that if they make a breakthrough and become an upper god emperor, not only will they have to kill Yi Qinfeng, but they will also have to be worshipped by our Machi clan for 1,000 years. Earlier, Machi Hong had clearly seen the scene of his ancestor's death. In the beginning he was extremely sorrowful and angry. However, after a while, he calmed down and began to think about how to avenge his ancestor. What a good child. Machi Yuning sighed. Child, let go of this hatred. At least, let it go for now. We know of your filial piety. However, that Yi Qinfeng isn't that easy to kill. After the 7 Mansions feast, the possibility of him entering the upper god emperor realm is much higher than me and Patriarch. Even if we can find someone and make him swear a heart demon blood oath, even if he enters the upper god emperor realm, he might not necessarily be a match for Yi Qinfeng. Machi Yuning said. Ancestor, I've thought about this matter. Machi Hong said with certainty. If Yi Qinfeng also enters the upper god emperor realm, the heart demon blood oath will be dropped. When that time comes, I will avenge myself. On the way back to Chunyang school, Zhen Pingfan was asking Yi Qinfeng all sorts of questions in the god emperor grade flying ship. He even asked Yi Qinfeng to summon his upper god sword soul and look around it. He looked very much like a mountain child going out of the city for the first time. Everything was new to him. Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged at the side. When he saw this scene he couldn't help but shake his head. However, he could understand Zhen Pingfan's feelings. You brat. Yi Qinfeng said helplessly. You're already so old. Why aren't you as calm as Duan Lingtian? When Zhen Pingfan heard this, he glanced at Duan Lingtian and grinned. Duan Lingtian is too shy to go up and watch. In my opinion, he must be very curious about the upper god sword soul. When Duan Lingtian heard this, he couldn't help but secretly roll his eyes. What's there to be curious about? It's just the upper god sword. I have one too. In fact, even before this elder Yi in front of him had a high-grade divine sword, he already had one. Wang? Suddenly, Duan Lingtian thought of something and asked the sword soul of the 7 orifices exquisite sword, Huang. Elder Ye's upper god sword soul shouldn't be able to sense your existence, right? Chapter 3998. Master, he won't be able to sense it. Huang quickly replied to Duan Lingtian when she heard Duan Lingtian's question. He's just a newly born sword soul. His abilities are limited. Of course, if you don't enter the God Emperor realm in a few hundred or 1,000 years, he might be able to sense my existence. Duan Lingtian heaved a sigh of relief when he heard Huanger's words. However, he ignored the rest of Huanger's words. With his current cultivation base, if he was still unable to enter the God Emperor realm in a few hundred or 1,000 years, he might as well kill himself. Junior Uncle Yi. Suddenly Zhen Pingfan seemed to have thought of something and he asked Yi Qinfeng, before I met Machi Yuning, the Golden Seat Elder of the Machi clan, I didn't think of him at all. Since he doesn't have long to live, can't he lend or entrust his half-soul prominent divine weapon to Machi Ju? Of course he can. Yi Qinfeng smiled faintly when he heard Zhen Pingfan's words. However, do you think he would do that in the beginning? Before he knew I possessed a high-soul divine weapon, would he have thought I would come knocking on your door to take back your high-soul divine weapon and kill Machi Ju? Zhen Pingfan pondered for a moment before he nodded in realization. That's true. I was mistaken. I forgot they didn't know you had such strength, Junior Uncle Yi. The high-soul divine weapon had allowed his Junior Uncle Ye's strength to rise to another level. He now possessed the strength to intimidate the Machi clan and make them lower their heads. Moreover, do you think Machi Yuning had no selfish motives? Yi Qinfeng continued, he has a son and a grandson. Although his son failed to enter the God Emperor realm and died a long time ago, he still has a grandson who's already a lesser God Emperor. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't have given his high soul divine weapon to Ma Qiju. Zhen Pingfan nodded repeatedly when he heard Yi Qinfeng's words. I didn't think too much about it. It's just that when I saw Ma Qiju die, I felt his death wasn't worth it. The resentful woman refused to admit defeat and took back her high soul divine weapon. However, before she could even use it, she lost her life again. Zhen Pingfan shook his head as he spoke. That's his fate, Yi Qinfeng said indifferently. Yi Qinfeng said indifferently. Ma Qiju was just an ant in his eyes. Even before he possessed a high soul divine weapon, Ma Qiju had been killed by him to kill Ma Qiju. His cultivation based to Ma Qiju t his comprehension, as comprehension's s to origin to his s to clones to kill Ma Qiju. Apart from that, he had also mastered the sword Dao. Not only was he the #1 expert in the Pure Sun sect, but many people in the East Mountain Prefecture also called him the #1 expert in the East Mountain Prefecture. However, he wasn't interested in sparring with the experts from the other top Emperor God-level factions in the East Mountain Prefecture and defeating them. Hence, this title wasn't considered legitimate. That was before he had successfully nurtured his high soul divine weapon with his high soul divine weapon. At this moment, Yi Qinfeng was very confident. He was confident no one in Tunglung province would be able to withstand a sword strike from him. After Yi Qinfeng and Zhen Pingfan ended their conversation, Yi Qinfeng looked at Duan Lingtian, who was sitting in the corner of the flying ship, and asked with a smile, Duan Lingtian, does your master plan to come to the Mystic Gangland? Duan Lingtian had already guessed Yi Qinfeng would ask this question, but he did not expect Yi Qinfeng to ask at this moment. He could not help but feel slightly embarrassed. Elder Yi, my master has already left the Devata realm for the realms of gods. He said if he arrived at the Mystic Gangland, he would consider coming to Chunyang School. However, in the end he didn't arrive at the Mystic Gangland. Duan Lingtian replied. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Yi Qinfeng frowned slightly. Then he shook his head and smiled. Perhaps I'm being too rash. How can someone who has mastered the sword Dao to such an extent in the Devata realm be restrained by Chunyang School? When Yi Qinfeng spoke up to this point, he looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, Duan Lingtian, you have to work hard. Although you're younger than your master and your cultivation base has already surpassed him, you're still inferior to him in terms of foundation. When he arrives at the realms of gods, he'll have a huge breakthrough. In fact, the most difficult thing in the realms of gods is not to raise one's cultivation base, but to raise one's profundities as well. The most difficult thing is the four Dao of heaven and earth. Moreover, your master's sword Dao has reached the critical point of breaking through to the next stage. Once he breaks through, he'll be able to kill an elite high-level divine emperor as soon as he becomes a divine emperor. An envious expression appeared on Yi Qinfeng's face when he finished speaking. A hint of passion could be seen in his eyes as well. That was the stage he wanted to reach as well. However, he was still far from that cultivation level and would not reach it so quickly. Duan Lingtian did not know about this earlier. When he heard Yi Qinfeng's words, he could not help but feel shocked. He knew that perhaps even his master didn't know about this. He's able to kill an elite high-level divine emperor as soon as he becomes a divine emperor? Even with my current strength, I don't have such strength. Even after I've stabilized my cultivation base as a medium divine emperor, I still don't have such strength. Moreover, Duan Lingtian knew Yi Qinfeng had met his master before, so he knew his master's mastery of the law of time. Since Yi Qinfeng had said so, it meant he had considered the profundities his master had comprehended as well. While Duan Lingtian was lost in his thoughts, Zhen Pingfan, who was standing at the side, was stunned. Junior Uncle Yi, do you mean Duan Lingtian's master's comprehension of the sword Dao is higher than yours? Zhen Pingfan could clearly see the envy on Yi Qinfeng's face. Why was he envious? It was not difficult to figure out. Moreover, Yi Qinfeng had said Duan Lingtian's master was able to kill an elite high-level divine emperor as soon as he became a divine emperor. After all, Yi Qinfeng was not one to speak without thinking. He's much stronger than me. In response to Zhen Pingfan's question, Yi Qinfeng gave him an affirmative answer. This naturally caused Zhen Pingfan to be shocked, and he was unable to recover from his shock for a long time. Moreover, Yi Qinfeng continued to say, Duan Lingtian's sword Dao is the same as his master's. In other words, Duan Lingtian's sword Dao was taught to him by his master. This is what I admire the most about him. Although I've passed down my comprehension of the sword Dao, none of my disciples have been able to comprehend it, not even the embryonic form. Yi Qinfeng sighed when he reached the end of his sentence. When Zhen Pingfan regained his senses, he looked at Duan Lingtian with bright eyes and asked anxiously, Duan Lingtan, does your master still need more disciples? As soon as Zhen Pingfan said this, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but be speechless. Why didn't he see that Elder Zhen had such a shameless side before? How old are you? You're almost 10,000 years older than my master. Become his disciple? Yi Chenfeng couldn't help but glare at Zhen Pingfan. You little brat, aren't you afraid that your father will break your legs? Your master is your father. Zhen Pingfan chuckled. Be that as it may, I believe my father understands me. Moreover, if I really master the sword Dao, he'll definitely praise me. Zhen Pingfan looked at Duan Lingtian again. Duan Lingtian, why don't you ask your master if he's still accepting disciples? I can be your junior brother. Of course, if you're embarrassed, I'll be your senior brother. I'll take care of you in the future. What do you think? Zhen Pingfan said with a fervent look in his eyes. Duan Lingtan was somewhat helpless when he heard Zhen Pingfan's words, but he still mercilessly shattered his fantasy. Elder Zhen, the reason I can walk the path of the sword Dao that my master has mastered is because I've been walking his path since I was in the mundane plane. It's also because of this that I was able to successfully walk the path of the sword Dao, and even use it as a foundation to walk my own path of the sword Dao. I'm afraid you won't be able to. As soon as Duan Lingtian said this, Zhen Pingfan's face was filled with disappointment, and there was some unwillingness in his eyes. Yi Chenfeng, on the other hand, suddenly understood. So that's how it is. So if I want a disciple who can walk the path of the sword Dao, I still have to go to the mundane plane to find one? That makes sense. A little fellow in the mundane plane is like an unpolished jade. I just have to add a few strokes on it, and it'll naturally become the jade I want. Why didn't I think of this before? Yi Chenfeng fell into deep thought. Based on his muttering, it was clear he really wanted to find another disciple in the mundane plane. Upon hearing Yi Chenfeng's words, Zhen Pingfan was speechless. He said, Junior Uncle Yi, you're being too whimsical. Even if someone from the mundane plane can walk the path of the sword Dao that you've taken, I'm afraid it won't be easy for them to go to the realms of gods from the mundane plane. Do you think everyone is like you and Duan Lingtian? Moreover, it's not like you didn't have any disciples in the mundane plane in the past. They also walked the path of the sword Dao. Later on, a few of them even came to the profound gangland and became gods. However, did they walk the path of the sword Dao that you've taken? Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duan Lingtian was suddenly enlightened. He looked at Duan Lingtian and asked, Duan Lingtian, when you obtained your master's legacy in the mundane plane, did the legacy he left behind contain any comprehension of the sword Dao? No. Duan Lingtian shook his head confidently. Master left it behind before he ascended to the Devata realm. At that time he hadn't mastered the sword Dao yet. In fact, he hadn't even mastered the rudimentary form of the sword Dao yet. Upon hearing this, Yi Chenfeng's expression was filled with disappointment. I thought he left behind the legacy in the mundane plane after mastering the sword Dao. In that case, I don't think there's a chance. In the past, I also left behind my legacy in the mundane plane. Moreover, the sword Dao I mastered later on is also based on that legacy. Many of my disciples in the mundane plane have outstanding innate talent and comprehension skills. However, none of them managed to comprehend the rudimentary form of my sword Dao. Perhaps my sword Dao is only suitable for me and not others. Chapter 3999. While Yi Chenfeng was sighing with emotion, Zhen Pingfan said helplessly, Junior Uncle Yi, don't be too greedy. It's fine if you're a monster yourself, but you want to nurture another one? Zhen Pingfan shook his head as he spoke. Yi Chenfeng glared at Zhen Pingfan. How can this be called greedy? If that's the case, what did Duan Lingtian and his master say? Just wait and see. If Brother Qingyang doesn't die prematurely, he'll definitely become a figure that will shock all the planes of gods in the future. I'm not sure about other aspects, but in terms of sword principle, it'll be very difficult for Duan Lingtian to surpass his master. It might even be impossible. No one understood Feng Qingyang's sword principle better than Yi Chenfeng. Even Duan Lingtian did not understand it as well as he did. Feng Qingyang's sword principle was at a level that was beyond his reach. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian's sword principle was not bad, but it was not profound or heaven-defying. Even he was slightly inferior to Duan Lingtian's sword principle. At least, that was what he thought Duan Lingtian had shown earlier. Unless Duan Lingtian was holding back. However, he did not think that was possible. In the past, when Duan Lingtian defeated Mochi Hong, the strongest person among the younger generation of the Mochi family, in the Seven Kills Valley, many people in Chunyang School had recorded the battle using the floating image pearl. Therefore Yi Qinfeng had watched the battle through the floating image pearl. He hasn't even reached the Divine Emperor realm, but his sword principle is already so strong? Zhen Pingfan could not help but click his tongue when he heard this. At the same time, a yearning look appeared in his eyes. I'm really curious, what kind of person is he to be so monstrous? Even you, Junior Uncle Yi, feel inferior to him in terms of sword principle. At the same time, Zhen Pingfan seemed to have thought of something. He lowered his voice and asked Yi Qinfeng, Junior Uncle Yi, as far as I know, sword principle can also make one an omnipotent expert. Moreover, it requires a lot of sword principle. Will Duan Lingtian's master become a supreme master in the future? Zhen Pingfan knew very well how difficult it was to master the four Tao of heaven and earth. In the realms of gods, ultimate gods who had mastered the four Tao of heaven and earth were considered potential supreme experts. It was also because of this that he couldn't help but make such a connection with Duan Lingtian's master, who had an astonishing way of the sword. Upon hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Yi Qinfeng remained silent for a moment before speaking again. No one knows. Even if you ask me, I don't know. To be honest, you, Zhen Pingfan, also have the potential to become an omnipotent master. However, compared to you, Zhen Pingfan, compared to me, I think that Brother Qingyang has a better chance of becoming an omnipotent expert. Then Yi Qinfeng looked at Duan Lingtian and said, even Duan Lingtian has a better chance than you and me. Although Yi Qinfeng felt Duan Lingtian's way of the sword was not as good as his master, Feng Qingyang. However, how old was Duan Lingtian? He was not even 1,000 years old. Previously, when Yi Qinfeng followed Duan Lingtian back to the Devata realm, he had learned a lot about Duan Lingtian's legendary experiences in the lower realms. Most importantly, Yi Qinfeng was only 1,000 years old. Duan Lingtian was only 700 years old. What, 2,700 years old? That was nonsense. Duan Lingtian had used a divine pill that could conceal one's bone age. Naturally, although he already knew about this matter, he did not point it out because he felt Duan Lingtian must have his own reasons for doing this. There was no need to point it out. Comparisons are odious indeed. Zhen Pingfan glanced at Duan Lingtian and shook his head helplessly. I've always dreamed of mastering any one of the heaven and earth Tao, even if it's just a rudimentary form. However, up until now, I haven't made any progress after more than 10,000 years. Boy, you're not even 3,000 years old, but you've already mastered the sword Tao. After the Seven Mansions banquet, I'm afraid even those godly venerables' forces will pay attention to you. In the past, Zhen Pingfan had heard from others that Duan Lingtian had told many people on the Chunyang School's island of versatility that his ambition was not in the Chunyang School. However, Yi Qinfeng did not take it seriously. He thought Duan Lingtian was arrogant because of his achievements. However, when he learned Duan Lingtian had mastered the sword Tao, he changed his mind. Duan Lingtian's current strength was enough for those godly venerables' forces to rope him in. It's just luck. Duan Lingtian shook his head and smiled. Upon hearing that, Zhen Pingfan immediately glared at him. Boy, even if you want to be humble, can't you be humble in another way? If you say that again, I won't be able to resist the urge to kill you. It's fine if you say that the rudimentary form of the sword Tao is just luck. Do you think the sword Tao can be mastered just because of luck? For the rest of the journey, Zhen Pingfan was still speculating. He wanted to know if Duan Lingtian's sword Tao could be replicated. He was obviously unwilling to give up. After all, the sword Tao was too tempting. Elder Zhen. Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly. If you're really interested, you'll have to wait until you meet my master in the future. My master is currently in another realm of gods. Why don't I introduce you to him in the future? It was only at this moment that Duan Lingtian finally managed to shut Zhen Pingfan up. He no longer mentioned the sword Tao. Duan Lingtian. At the same time, Yi Qinfeng said to Duan Lingtian, if it's possible, you should fight for the first place in the Seven Prefectures banquet. If you can win, Chunyang School will be able to obtain 4 places to enter that place. At that time, I can take the lead and ask Chunyang School to devote all its resources to nurturing you and providing you with everything you need. Chunyang School will also do its best. Even if you don't plan to stay in Chunyang School forever. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up when he heard Yi Qinfeng's words. Chunyang School was not an ordinary sect. As one of the strongest emperor god forces in Tonglung province, the resources it could mobilize were enormous. There was no lack of things that could help him. If Chunyang School was willing to contribute so much, he could say that he had profited greatly. Elder Yi, I'll do my best. Although he had defeated Machi Hong of the Machi clan, who was known as the number one genius under 10,000 years old in Tunglung province, and might even replace him soon to obtain the honor of being the number one person under 10,000 years old in Tunglung province, Duanling Tian did not think that he would definitely win the 7 prefectures banquet. In fact, he did not even dare to say that he would be able to get into the top 3. The 7 prefectures banquet was a banquet jointly organized by the 7 prefectures. Tunglung province was only one of the prefectures. Who could say that the other 6 prefectures did not have any monstrous geniuses? Half a month after Duanling Tian, Yi Qinfeng and Zhen Pingfan returned to Chunyang School, news of Yi Qinfeng killing the Machi clan's golden seat elder Machi Ju and taking back the half-soul high-quality divine weapon spread throughout Tunglung province. When the news spread, the entire Tunglung province was shaken. Even Chunyang School was in an uproar. Elder Yi Qinfeng actually managed to nurture a full-soul high-quality divine weapon? He killed the golden throne elder of the Machi family Machi Ju with just one sword strike? It's said that Elder Yi Qinfeng's current strength is not weaker than an ordinary upper god emperor. I really did not expect that our Chunyang School would produce such a person. All over Chunyang School disciples were talking about the same thing. As for the higher-ups of Chunyang School, they were talking about another matter. With Elder Yi Qinfeng's strength, after the 7 prefectures banquet, as long as he has a quota to enter that place, I'm afraid that he will definitely become a upper god emperor, right? I also think it's a done deal. If that's the case, our Chunyang School will also have a upper god emperor. Elder Ye's current strength is not weaker than an ordinary upper god emperor. Once he enters the upper god emperor realm, he will definitely be one of the best among the upper god emperors. Unlike the surprise of Chunyang School, the 7 Kills Valley Martial Dragon Heavenly Sect, and the other top powers of Tunglung province were all feeling pressured. They did not expect that Chunyang School's Yi Qinfeng would suddenly nurture a full-soul high-quality divine weapon. That Yi Qinfeng, how did he do it? He's only a middle god emperor, yet he managed to nurture a full-soul high-quality divine weapon? Isn't a full-soul high-quality divine weapon something that only upper god emperors can nurture? It's not like there haven't been similar cases. However, those middle god emperors who managed to nurture a full-soul high-quality divine weapon, which one of them did not have a fortuitous encounter? Yi Qinfeng definitely had a fortuitous encounter. Among the 5 powers of Tunglung province, because of Yi Qinfeng's existence, Chunyang School was originally the most powerful. Now that Yi Qinfeng's strength had reached a new level, he immediately suppressed the other 4 powers to the point that they could not breathe. However, at the same time, they also paid more attention to the 7 prefectures banquet 10 years later. In the 7 prefectures banquet 10 years later, even if Duanling Tian is able to get a spot for Yi Qinfeng might not be able to break through and become an upper god emperor. If we get the chance, we might be able to give birth to 1 or 2 upper god emperors. In the following time, we will do our best to nurture the most outstanding young disciples. Even if we have to rush the seedlings to help them grow, we will not hesitate to pay a price. If we don't grasp this opportunity, I'm afraid that in Tunglung province, only Chunyang School will be able to reign supreme. At this moment, the 4 powers of Tunglung province were working hard to prepare for the 7 prefectures banquet 10 years later. Almost at the same time, in a secluded canyon in the Eastern Mountain Prefecture behind the Void Crack, in a small independent dimension, there was a person who was suffering from unprecedented pain. In the 7 prefectures banquet, I must make it into the top 10. My goal is to kill Duanling Tian and Tianlong clan's clan master Long Qingchong. Kill. In the small independent space under the raging storm, a youth was bathed in blood and fighting as if he had gone mad. His tenacity was unimaginable to ordinary people. He fell down again and again and stood up again and again. He did not know how many times, but he did not die. Inside the valley, outside the spatial crack, an old man stood there, his eyes abnormally bright. I didn't expect his tenacity to be so strong. Looks like he really has a chance of succeeding. If he succeeds, his strength will probably rise to a whole new level. At that time, perhaps he will be able to compete with Duanling Tian? Thinking of Duanling Tian's astonishing performance in the 7 Kills Valley, the old man's expression became somewhat heavy. I really didn't expect that Duanling Tian to have grasped the way of the sword. Chapter 4000. Machi Clan. After a few years, Machi Hong finally received the ultimate godly emperor-grade divine elixir that the Machi clan had purchased for him. It was a godly emperor-grade divine elixir that could help him consolidate his cultivation base. With this divine elixir, I'll definitely be able to consolidate my cultivation base before the 7 prefectures feast. At that time I might be able to defeat Duanling Tian. Ma Qihong did not slack off on his cultivation even when he was waiting for the ultimate godly emperor-grade divine elixir. In fact, he worked even harder because of Ma Qiju's death. Currently, Duanling Tian was his current target. His ultimate target was Yi Qinfeng. He did not know if there was anyone in the Ma Qi clan who could avenge Yi Qinfeng. Even if there was, he did not intend to place all his hopes on the Ma Qi clan. After all, the Ma Qi clan had to prioritize the clan. He might not fall out with Yi Qinfeng in the Chunyang school just because of the death of his ancestor. Therefore he felt that he had to rely on himself. However, it was still too far away for him to kill Yi Qinfeng and avenge his ancestor. However, although it was far away, he did not despair. I'll surpass Duanling Tian first. After surpassing Duanling Tian, I'll become the strongest person among the younger generation in the Eastern Ridge Mansion and the surrounding areas. Then I'll work hard and strive to catch up to Yi Qinfeng. Yi Qinfeng is 10,000 years older than me. I might be able to catch up with him after 10,000 years. I remember that when he was my age, he wasn't as good as me. The current Ma Qihong was working harder than ever when it came to cultivation. State capital of Qing. It was a prefecture adjacent to Tunglung province. The young geniuses of the state capital of Qing would also participate in the 7 prefectures feast. The puppet villa was one of the top 3 forces in the state capital of Qing. There were many experts in the villa, including a few intermediate god emperors. Duanling Tian has mastered the sword principle? He defeated Ma Qihong, who has been a high-level divine emperor for 100 years, with the strength of a middle-level divine emperor for 2 years? A young man who had just come out of seclusion in the puppet villa was shocked when he heard the news. Then, a bitter smile appeared on his face. It seems like it's almost impossible to surpass him in the 7 prefectures feast. My next goal is to be in the top 10 of the 7 prefectures feast. The young man sighed and returned to his room to continue his cultivation. At this moment, there were no disciples from the Tai sect who had fought with the Tianlong clan. Otherwise, they would have recognized the young man at first glance. The young man was the former monstrous disciple of Greater One sect, Shimin Longxiang. The Feast of 7 Prefectures feast was getting closer. Not only were the young disciples from the 5 Emperor Gods forces in East Ridge Prefecture cultivating diligently, but even the young disciples from the other 6 prefectures, including State Prefecture of Qing, were also cultivating diligently to improve themselves. The 7 Prefectures feast was significant to them. That was because it was opened in the secret to Cultivation City. The secret to Cultivation City was jointly discovered by the 7 prefectures. Or it could be said that they discovered it together and opened it together. Zhen Pingfan said to Duanling Tian in the Chunyang School's encampment on Yunfeng Island. Zhen Pingfan came to Duanling Tian to ask about the Way of the Sword. Duanling Tian mentioned the 7 prefectures feast and Zhen Pingfan told him about it. After all, it was not a secret. Secret to Cultivation City? There's a chance to become a high-level god emperor? Duanling Tian asked. Duanling Tian felt that the secret to Cultivation City was a bit vulgar, but when he thought about how it could help a mid-level god emperor become a high-level god emperor, he felt that it was not an ordinary place. Yes. Zhen Pingfan nodded. There's an opportunity for a mid-level god emperor to become a high-level god emperor. Moreover, there have been many high-level god emperors in the history of the secret to Cultivation City. What kind of place is the secret to Cultivation City? How was it formed? Duanling Tian asked curiously. Was it left behind by an expert? You can say yes, but you can also say no. Zhen Pingfan shook his head and said. When Duanling Tian heard this, he was naturally confused. What did he mean by, you can say yes, but you can also say no? Elder Zhen, please tell me more about it. Duanling Tian smiled bitterly. Zhen Pingfan nodded. Then I'll give you a detailed introduction of the secret to Cultivation City. I wonder, what do you think of the omnipotent experts? Zhen Pingfan asked. Duanling Tian's eyes flashed when he heard this. He said bluntly, I don't know much about the ultimate experts. I only know that they're the most powerful beings in this world. Also, the 18 realms of gods are the little worlds in the bodies of the 18 ultimate experts. Apart from these 18 ultimate experts, there are other ultimate experts as well. However, those ultimate experts are not as powerful as the 18 ultimate experts who occupy the realms of gods. Duanling Tian said. It's rare for you to know all this. Zhen Pingfan said with a smile. It said that only 18 realms of gods can exist in this world. If one of the 18 realms of gods can't be destroyed, the other ultimate experts won't be able to occupy a realm of gods and turn their little worlds into realms of gods. Apart from those who left early or were sent away by the ultimate experts, the rest of the living beings in the realms of gods that have been destroyed are basically annihilated. The realms of gods that have been destroyed are reduced to ruins. They will enter the spatial turbulence and wander around until they reach a place where even the other ultimate experts can't find them. After destroying a realm of gods and killing an ultimate expert, the ultimate expert who killed the ultimate expert will be able to turn his little world into a new realm of gods. Do you know about this? Zhen Pingfan asked. I've heard of it. Duan Lingtian nodded. Zhen Pingfan continued, when another supreme expert kills another supreme expert who occupies a seat in a realm of gods and destroys the minor world in his opponent's body, although he can't plunder the entire realm of gods, he can still use his strength to obtain fragments from the minor world in his opponent's realm of gods. The fragments of the realm of gods are compressed into a small realm of gods by the ultimate experts. The small realm of gods has absorbed the essence of the realm of gods and the ultimate experts have set up many formations in it. Therefore, it has become a holy land for cultivation. In the end, these small dimensions will be casually thrown into the small world within the body of the strongest, waiting for the fated to discover and obtain them. When Zhen Fan reached this part of his sentence, he did not continue to speak. He merely smiled at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, understood what Zhen Pingfan was trying to say. Elder Zhen, you're saying the Saint Land secret zone discovered by the top God Emperor forces in the Seven Mansions, including our Eastern Ridge Mansion, is actually a fragment of a realm that a supreme powerhouse casually tossed into the mystic Handle land that he modified? Duan Lingtian was shocked. He had never heard of this before. That's right. Zhen Pingfan nodded. Yes, they are fragments of the realm of gods. Furthermore, not only did the utmost powerful ones modify these fragments to form an independent space within them, but they also spent a lot of effort on them so that after the resources within were depleted, they could spend a period of time to be reborn. As for whether there is a limit to this rebirth, I'm not sure yet. However, under normal circumstances, there is definitely a limit. As for the secret realms in the 7 prefectures, including our Tunglung province, they discovered and opened it together. Because it has only been opened for a few 100,000 years, the environment inside has not shown any signs of decay. The secret realms in the secret realms need about 10,000 years to recover once it is depleted. Therefore, the 7 prefectures, including our Tunglung province, made a 10,000-year promise to open the secret realms in the secret realms once every 10,000 years. There is a limit to the number of people who can enter the secret realms in the secret realms. After many years of exploration, it is most suitable for 24 people to enter at once. If only 3 people enter, there will be some surplus resources inside. However, if only 25 people enter, it will be a little tight. In the beginning, the 7 prefectures divided the 24 people according to their top fighting strength. However, after tens of thousands of years, many people realized that because some of the forces had people who had advanced to Upper God Emperor the last time they entered, the next time the Upper God Emperor made a move, they could easily snatch the quota for their forces. Therefore, in accordance with the principle of majority rule, they changed the rule of dividing the quota according to their top fighting strength. It was changed to the younger generation under 10,000 years old fighting for the quota to show absolute fairness. Moreover, by doing so, it also allowed the major forces to take the initiative to nurture the younger generation. After that, many forces had people who had advanced to Upper God Emperor without entering the secret realms in the secret realms. When Zhen Pingfan said this, Duan Lingtian suddenly understood. No wonder the younger generation had to decide the quota to enter the secret realms in the secret realms. It turned out that they were worried that some forces would have Upper God Emperors first and have an advantage in the next competition for the quota to enter the secret realms in the secret realms. This was like a snowball rolling, getting bigger and bigger. As for those forces who had obtained the quota but did not have any Upper God Emperors, they would definitely not be able to compete in the future. The first place of the 7 prefectures' grand banquet can fight for 4 quotas for the forces behind them. The second and third place can fight for 3 quotas for the forces behind them. The 4th to 10th place can fight for 2 quotas for the forces behind them. When he thought of this, Duan Lingtian looked at Zhen Pingfan and could not help but ask curiously, Elder Zhen, what if 2 or more monstrous young geniuses are born in a force at the same time and 2 or more of them enter the top 10 at the same time? If the number of quotas they snatch exceeds the number of middle god emperors and the force behind them, what about the remaining quotas? Give them to the lower god emperors and the force behind them? Duan Lingtian had just thought of this question. Of course. Jin Pingfan nodded. However, giving the lower god emperors a chance to enter is actually a bit of a waste. Of course, if there are extra quotas they can choose to give them to others. They can even auction them. Chapter 4001. After listening to Zhen Pingfan's explanation, Duan Lingtian gained a deeper understanding of the 7 prefectures' feast's purpose. Everything was for the sake of the secret territory in the Saint Land. The secret territory in the Saint Land was the work of an ultimate powerhouse. It contained an opportunity for an intermediate god emperor to become an upper god emperor. It was enough to make those who had little hope of becoming an upper god emperor go crazy. No wonder Chunyang School was willing to invest so many resources in me. As long as I can make it into the top 10, it'll be a huge gain compared to what they invested in me. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Of course, Duan Lingtian knew that if he really made it into the top 10 of the 7 prefectures' feast, Chunyang School would not mistreat him. Moreover, after returning from the 7 Kills Valley, he had received another batch of cultivation resources from Chunyang School. They were even more generous than the last time. Duan Lingtian knew that Chunyang School was so generous because he had displayed strength that surpassed Mochi Hong of the Mochi clan in the 7 Kills Valley. Previously, Chunyang School had only expected him to make it into the top 10 of the 7 prefectures' feast. Now he wanted to make it into the top 3. Of course, even if he did not make it into the top 3 of the 7 prefectures' feast, Chunyang School would not blame him. After all, Chunyang School only wanted Duan Lingtian to make it into the top 3 of the 10. Cultivate well and try your best to become stronger. As far as I know, the other 2 prefectures should have some trump cards up their sleeves for the 7 prefectures' feast this time. Zhen Pingfan said to Duan Lingtian with a solemn expression. He was not worried that Duan Lingtian would be complacent. Instead, he hoped that Duan Lingtian would be mentally prepared. After spending some time together, Zhen Pingfan naturally realized that although Duan Lingtian was young, he was extremely mature. As expected of a genius who had fought his way from the mundane realm to the realm of gods. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded. He had never underestimated the geniuses from the other 6 prefectures. Even in Tunglung province, he didn't dare to say that the geniuses from the other forces were inferior to Mochi Hong. Who knew whether or not they had hidden trump cards, all for the sake of winning by surprise at the 7 prefectures' feast when others were careless. This was not impossible. If he hid himself and kept a low profile, he might be able to strike at the critical moment. If he wanted to trick him, the other party was destined to waste his efforts. He had experienced too much since he came from the mundane realms. Naturally, he knew that he couldn't underestimate anyone. Sometimes, the slightest mistake could cost him his life. In the past, the number of people who had died at his hands was not small. The date of the 7 prefectures' feast was getting closer and closer. Time passed quickly as the young geniuses of the 7 prefectures worked hard to cultivate and improve themselves. In the blink of an eye, there was only half a year left until the 7 prefectures' feast. At this time, the various top emperor god forces in the 7 prefectures began to make their moves. Most of them were preparing to depart for the 7 prefectures' feast. The 7 prefectures' feast was held once every 10,000 years. It was held in Tunglung Province, Qing State Prefecture, and the other prefectures. This time, it was the turn of a prefecture called Mystic Jade Prefecture. There were a total of 6 top Emperor God forces in Mystic Jade Prefecture. One of the Emperor God forces even had an upper-level Emperor God. He had broken through after the 7 prefectures' feast 2 years ago. He had broken through in the Holy Land's secret realm. However, this upper-level Emperor God was old and did not have many years left to live. It was said that he had been severely injured during the previous heavenly tribulation. He broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm 20,000 years ago and was severely injured during the most recent heavenly tribulation? Duan Lingtian could not help but be shocked when he heard this from Zhen Pingfan. At the same time, he felt that it was somewhat unbelievable. Even if a middle-level Emperor God would definitely die during the next heavenly tribulation, as long as he broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm before the heavenly tribulation arrived, it should not be too difficult for him to overcome the heavenly tribulation in the next 20,000 years, right? Could it be that he was severely injured by the heavenly tribulation before he broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm and left behind some hidden injuries? That's why he was dragged down by his old injuries after he broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm? Duan Tian could not help but make such a guess. That's not the case. Zhen Pingfan shook his head. Before he broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm, he was indeed injured. However, a few thousand years after he broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm, his injuries completely healed. At that time, it was still easy for him to deal with the heavenly tribulation. However, in the next few thousand years, because his cultivation did not improve, it became more and more difficult for him to deal with the heavenly tribulation. 8,000 years ago he was injured for the first time. Although it was only a light injury, it was still an injury. After that, the injuries he suffered became more and more serious. After listening to Zhen Pingfan's explanation, Duan Tian also realized the reason. It turned out that after that person broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm, his strength increased very slowly. In fact, there was even a period of time when he did not improve at all. 1,000 years of heavenly tribulation, each time stronger than the last. Although he broke through to the upper-level Emperor realm, he did not manage to catch up with the growth rate of the heavenly tribulation. Sooner or later he would not be able to escape death. Zhen Pingfan sighed. When Duan Tian heard this, his gaze also became somewhat complicated. At this moment he thought of his family members. In the future, should he let his family members break through to the Divine King realm? If they broke through, they would have to start fighting against the heavens. If they did not break through, although their strength would be slightly weaker, as long as there were no accidents, they would be able to live forever. It's better to let them choose for themselves. When he thought of his family members, including his own children who were already adults, Duan Tian shook his head for a moment. He felt that there was no need for him to care too much. Everyone had their own thoughts. Perhaps, for some people, instead of suppressing their cultivation base and not raising it, it would be better for them to indulge themselves. Even if they died in the end, they would not regret it. Elder Zhen, I only know that we'll be leaving in a month. May I know when exactly we'll be leaving? The reason Duan Tian was with Zhen Pingfan was because the Chunyang school was about to head to the profound Jade Mansion to participate in the Seven Mansions banquet. The Seven Mansions banquet would not wait for everyone to arrive before it began. It had a fixed date, and usually one would have to arrive at the destination in advance. A few days ago, Duan Tian had been awakened by the news that he would be leaving the sect in a month's time to head to the Seven Mansions banquet. 9 days later. Duan Tian did not know the exact time, but that did not mean that Zhen Pingfan did not know. It was precisely because the departure time was getting closer and closer that he came to chat with Duan Tian. Otherwise, he would not want to delay Duan Tian's cultivation. 9 days? That's soon. Duan Tian nodded. In the Devata realms. In the solitary destructive heaven. In the heavenly palace. Master, how's your main body doing? Recently, not only was Duan Tian in closed-door cultivation, but his clone in the lower secondary realms was also in closed-door cultivation to focus on his cultivation. Although his main body would not be affected if his main body was in closed-door cultivation, his main body was in closed-door cultivation. However, if his main body was not in closed-door cultivation with his main body, the effect of his main body's closed-door cultivation would be greatly reduced. After his main body came out of closed-door cultivation, his main body came out of closed-door cultivation as well. Then he looked for his master, Feng Qingyang's main body, and asked about his master's situation in the realms of gods. Not bad. Feng Qingyang smiled faintly and did not say much. Duan Tian did not press the matter. After all, he had asked his master many times about his main body's situation in the realms of gods. However, his master did not tell him the details each time. Naturally, he knew his master was only acting this way because he did not want to worry him. At the same time, he did not want to make up lies to deceive him. For this reason, Duan Tian gave up on asking his master. The Seven Mansions banquet is about to begin, right? Feng Qingyang asked. Yes. Duan Tian nodded. There's only half a year left before the Seven Mansions banquet begins. The Chunyang school will depart in 9 days and head to the profound Jade Mansion where the Seven Mansions banquet will be held. Are you confident? Feng Qingyang asked with a smile on his face. Top 10 shouldn't be a problem. Duan Tian smiled faintly. As for top 3 or even first place, I can't say for sure. After all, no one knows if the other 6 mansions and the 3 Grand God Emperor forces in Tunglung province have any trump cards up their sleeves. Sometimes what's exposed might not be the best. 9 days later. 2 spaceships appeared outside the Chunyang school's estate. This time, the 2 people leading the Pure Sun sect to participate in the 7 Prefectures feast were both Middle God Emperors. One of them was the old ancestor of the hidden sword progeny Yi Qinfeng. The other person was the old ancestor of the tyrant saber progeny, Lu Fenggu. Although Lu Fenggu was not as strong as Yi Qinfeng, he was still slightly stronger than the other intermediate god emperors in the Chunyang school. Two flying ships, one on the left and one on the right, were flying side by side. They were both flying at the speed of a high-level god emperor. One of the spaceships belonged to Yi Qinfeng. The other was Lu Fenggu's spaceship. Duan Lingtian Zhenping Fan, and the people from the Yunfeng progeny who were heading to the Seven Mansions banquet were all in Yi Qinfeng's spaceship. Lan Xilin's righteous progeny was also there. This time, the leader of the righteous progeny was the old ancestor of the righteous progeny, Lan Jingming. I didn't expect that a good-for-nothing like Lan Xilin would have such a sensible great-grandfather like Elder Righteous. Today was the first time Duan Lingtian and Lan Jingming, the old ancestor of the righteous progeny, had met each other. However, Lan Jingming's enthusiasm made him feel as if they had known each other for many years. Moreover, Lan Jingming had brought Lan Xilin to Duan Lingtian and told him that if Lan Xilin dared to provoke Duan Lingtian in the future, Lan Jingming could directly kill him and the righteous progeny would not hold him accountable. Lan Xilin's face turned green when he heard Lan Jingming's words. If Duan Lingtian went crazy and killed him for no reason, then accused him of causing trouble first, wouldn't he die unjustly? Of course, what Lan Xilin did not know was that the reason Lan Jingming dared to say this was because he now understood Duan Lingtian and was sure that Duan Lingtian was not that kind of person. Chapter 4002. He's Duan Lingtian? He's really young. Not only does Duan Lingtian look young, but he's also really young. He's not even 3,000 years old. Duan Lingtian, who was in the airship, was the center of attention of the people from the other lineages for a long time after they departed. In the past, he only had a reputation from the outside world. Now, he truly had the ability to convince people in Chunyang school. He gave people a feeling that he deserved his reputation and was no longer doubted by many people like before. Now, many of the young disciples in the spaceship had gone to the Seven Kills Valley with Duan Lingtian and had seen Duan Lingtian fight with their own eyes. Because of this, with their confirmation, the others completely believed in Duan Lingtian's strength. Of course, the mirror image recorded by the floating image pearl at that time was enough to let people know more about Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian. At some point, a young man walked to Duan Lingtian's side. He was dressed in a snow-white robe. He was handsome and had an outstanding temperament. At the same time, there seemed to be a sense of coldness around him at all times. Previously, he stood to the side and did not smile. But now, after coming to Duan Lingtian's side, he forced a smile on his face. Just as Duan Lingtian looked at the young man in front of him in confusion, Zhenping Fan, who was standing a distance away, happened to see the situation here. When he saw the confusion on Duan Lingtian's face, he quickly reminded Duan Lingtian through telepathy. Duan Lingtian, this is the last disciple of my senior brother Yi Tong. Yi Tong. Upon hearing Zhenping Fan's words, an old figure suddenly appeared in Duan Lingtian's mind. It was the Hidden Sword Branch's elder Jingshu Yi Tong, who had led a few young prodigies of the Hidden Sword Branch to the Seven Kills Valley with him last time. However, since Yi Qinfeng was leading the team this time, Yi Tong did not go with him. As for the Yunfeng bloodline, the forefather, Zhenping Fan, didn't personally take action. The one leading the group was still Zhenping Fan, and it could only be Zhenping Fan. After all, excluding the headmaster of Chunyang School, Yun Peak only had 2 emperor gods. As for the headmaster of Chunyang School, he usually wouldn't personally lead a team to participate in the 7 prefectures feast. It had always been like this, because he controlled the sect-protecting formation of Chunyang School's encampment. If something unexpected happened, he might not be able to make it back in time even if he went to the 7 prefectures feast. I'm Yi Yingkai, a disciple of Elder Jingshu of the Hidden Sword sect, Yi Tong. Although the young man in white had a cold temperament, he was very polite. Due to Yi Qinfeng and Yi Tong, Duan Lingtian had a good impression of the Hidden Sword progeny. He quickly responded with a smile, I've heard of your name before, but I can't believe you're actually Elder Yi Tong's disciple. Master Yi Tong is very lucky to have such an outstanding disciple like you. Duan Lingtian said. In fact, Duan Lingtian had heard of Yi Yingkai a long time ago. Before he came to Chunyang School, there were a few names in Chunyang School that symbolized the strongest battle prowess of the Chunyang School's younger generation. One of them was Yi Yingkai. However, before today, Duan Lingtian only knew that Yi Yingkai was the grand disciple of Yi Qinfeng of the Hidden Sword sect. He didn't know that he was Yi Tong's disciple. After all, Yi Chenfeng had many disciples in the hidden sword sect. He even had 2 lesser god emperors. Yi Yingkai shook his head. It's not that master is lucky. It's I, Yi Yingkai, who was lucky enough to become master's disciple. That's why I am where I am today. When he said this, Yi Yingkai's smile disappeared and was replaced by a serious expression. When Duan Lingtian saw this, he realized that Yi Yingkai respected Yi Tong from the bottom of his heart. His evaluation of Yi Yingkai improved imperceptibly. Yi Yingkai comes from a god-emperor clan. At this time, Zhen Pingfan's voice transmission reached Duan Lingtian's ears. However, that god-emperor clan was destroyed by a god-emperor of the Alliance of Benevolence and Righteousness. Back then, Uncle Master Yi happened to pass by and saw him in his swaddling clothes. She felt compassion for him and wanted to save him. When the Alliance of Benevolence and Justice's Emperor God expert saw Uncle Master Yi's appearance, he didn't continue to eliminate him. However, after Master Yi returned, a few people from the Alliance of Benevolence and Righteousness quickly came to find Master Yi. They wanted Master Yi to promise that the infant wouldn't know the truth. They didn't want anyone in Chunyang School to become an enemy of the Alliance of Benevolence and Righteousness. Because of this, very few people know about Yi Yingkai's background. I'm afraid only a few people from the Hidden Sword faction and a few people from the Yunpeak faction know about it. Now there's you. Duan Lingtian, I'm telling you this because I trust that you'll keep your mouth shut. Yi Yingkai mustn't know about this. Otherwise it won't be good for him. Zhen Pingfan reminded him as he reached the end of his sentence. Duan Lingtian nodded in understanding. Yi Yingkai found out about his background. He's an orphan. Master Yi brought him back to the sect and he became Yi Tong's disciple. Zhen Pingfan said. At the same time, the serious expression on Yi Yingkai's face gradually faded. He chatted with Duan Lingtian for a while longer and asked him about cultivation before he left. During this time, Duan Lingtian noticed that Yi Yingkai's attitude toward him had changed significantly. When Yi Yingkai first approached him, there was a hint of arrogance in his eyes. However, at this moment, his arrogance was completely gone. He was completely convinced by Duan Lingtian. This was because he discovered that when he asked about cultivation, Duan Lingtian's answers made him ponder deeply. It made him realize the gap between him and Duan Lingtian. In fact, the reason Duan Lingtian had so many tricks up his sleeves was because he had cultivated many cultivation methods from the mundane realms to the Devata realms and the realms of gods. He had come into contact with many cultivation methods from the mundane realms, the Devata realms and the realms of gods. Based on his past experiences, he could often use some of the tricks he had learned in the past. Although it was not very helpful, it was still much better than cultivating in a serious manner. Perhaps, it was because Yi Yingkai took the initiative to greet Duan Lingtian. Many young disciples from the Chunyang school also stepped forward to greet Duan Lingtian. Among them there was no lack of outgoing and enthusiastic people. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian did not put on airs just because he was famous in the Chunyang school. Everyone had a good impression of Duan Lingtian. Senior brother Duan, you're amazing. You actually defeated Ma Chi Hong. You'll definitely be in the top 3 in the 7 prefectures banquet this time. Senior brother Duan, after the 7 prefectures banquet ends, I'll treat you to a drink. I have some good wine brewed from my family's precious treasures. We'll celebrate with you at that time. We won't leave until we're drunk. Senior brother Duan, my innate talent and comprehension ability are not as good as yours. However, a genius like you definitely needs to spend all his time cultivating. In the future, if you have any trivial matters, just send me a message. As long as it's within my ability, I'll solve it for you immediately. When the group of young disciples saw Duan Lingtian did not put on airs and had a good temper, they were happy to befriend Duan Lingtian. Of course, most importantly, the natural talent and comprehension ability Duan Lingtian revealed so far caused them to feel inferior. It was even to the extent that it was difficult for them to even arouse feelings of jealousy. All they could feel was envy. Moreover, in their opinion, befriending Duan Lingtian now would only bring them benefits and no harm. Otherwise, when Duan Lingtian grew up in the future, it would definitely be a different situation if they tried to befriend Duan Lingtian again. While Duan Lingtian was dealing with the group of young disciples, the leaders of the other branches who were heading to the 7 prefectures banquet this time were either the ancestors of their respective branches or the god emperors of their respective branches. All of them looked at Duan Lingtian with admiration. High innate talent and comprehension ability, but not the slightest bit of arrogance. If Duan Lingtian is willing to stay in Chunyang school in the future, he'll be able to take over the position of sect leader. That's enough to convince everyone. I'm afraid that's not very likely. In the past, Duan Lingtian was strongly wooed by the Jade Sun branch, so he expressed that he would not stay in Chunyang school. It's only a matter of time before he leaves Chunyang school. Speaking of that matter, this Duan Lingtian is indeed not bad. If it were an ordinary person with bad intentions, I'm afraid that they would pretend to agree to the Jade Sun branch, gain benefits, and then leave Chunyang school after they've grown up. This Duan Lingtian's character is indeed unquestionable. Even Duan Lingtian himself didn't know that he had unknowingly received so much praise. Unlike the spaceship controlled by Yi Qinfeng, where most of the people's attention was on Duan Lingtian, the other spaceship controlled by the tyrannical Blade Branch's ancestor, Lu Fenggu, was filled with people chatting in groups of 3 to 5. Among them, there were a few people who were constantly glancing at each other. These people were among the stronger members of Chunyang School's younger generation. They were existences on par with the hidden sword branch's prodigy Ying Kai. In a corner, a figure sat cross-legged as if he had been forgotten. "Senior brother, what's wrong with Chinya? Why do I feel like he's a completely different person after going out with you and coming back?" A middle-aged man asked the old man beside him in confusion. The old man was the leader of the Pingxing branch in Chunyang School this time. He was the son of the Pingxing branch's ancestor Yuan Hanjin, and also Yang Chinya's master. As for the middle-aged man, he was his junior brother, another Jade Void elder of the Pingxing branch. He probably still hasn't recovered from what happened to his father. Faced with his junior brother's question, Yuan Hanjin glanced at the cold figure sitting cross-legged in the corner and shook his head. "Senior brother." The middle-aged man's eyes flashed as he transmitted his voice to Yuan Hanjin. "I've also heard about his father. The person who killed his father is the Tianlong clan's clan master, Long Qingchong. You really don't plan to help him? Although I can't do anything to him in the Sky Dragon sect and I can't do anything to him in the open. Did he not leave the Sky Dragon sect? As long as we're willing, it won't be difficult to find a good opportunity." Chapter 4003. Yuan Hanjin looked deeply at his junior brother and said, "You don't have to care about this anymore. You don't have to say anything. It's best for Chinya to avenge his father himself. Don't tell Chinya this. Otherwise, you'll be misleading him and telling him that I don't want to avenge him." Yuan Hanjin's eyes turned cold as he spoke. His junior brother nodded. "Senior brother, I understand. I won't interfere in this anymore. Senior brother is right. It's best for Chinya to avenge his father himself. Looking at how hard he's working now, it's obvious that he's motivated by hatred." He looked at Yang Chinya, who was sitting cross-legged in a corner of the spaceship. He was cultivating diligently, ignoring everything around him. "It's good that you know." Yuan Hanjin retracted his cold gaze. His originally solemn expression eased up in an instant. At the same time, he said to his junior brother through voice transmission, "There's one more thing that I can tell you in advance. My disciple has already broken through to the medium-level godly emperor layer. He has consolidated his medium-level godly emperor cultivation. Also, his mastery of the laws has increased by a lot. Now, in Chunyang School, apart from Duan Lingtian, no one under 10,000 years old can compete with him." As Yuan Hanjin finished speaking, there was a hint of pride in his tone. "What?" Yuan Hanjin's junior brother was shocked when he heard Yuan Hanjin's voice transmission. "Chinya is so strong now? How is this possible?" He was well aware of Yang Chinya's strength. In the past, Yang Chinya was only slightly stronger than his most outstanding disciple. However, his master said Yang Chinya's strength was only second to Duan Lingtian among the younger generation under the age of 10,000 in the Pure Sun sect. You'll know whether it's possible or not after the 7 prefectures feast. Yuan Hanjin did not mind his junior brother's suspicion. "Also, think about it carefully. Have I, your senior brother, ever lied to you?" The middle-aged man looked apologetic when he heard Yuan Hanjin's words. "Senior brother, I'm not doubting your words. It's just that this is too shocking. I can't accept it for a while." The middle-aged man's heart was in turmoil. He could not calm down for a long time. It was impossible for his senior brother to lie. However, Yang Chinya's improvement in the past few decades had truly shocked him. A person who had just consolidated his cultivation as a low-level divine emperor had not only stepped into the middle-level divine emperor realm in a few short decades, but had also consolidated his cultivation as a middle-level divine emperor. Moreover, his comprehension of the profundities of the laws had improved as well? Could it be that his father's death provoked him and caused his strength to improve by leaps and bounds? He knew what kind of talent Yang Qinya had. Yang Qinya's improvement in the past few decades was really abnormal. That was the only explanation he could think of. If the father of one of my disciples was also killed, would they also be able to advance by leaps and bounds like Qinya? As soon as this thought appeared, it was immediately suppressed by the middle-aged man. No, this won't work. If they find out about this in the future, I'll become their father's murderer. When he thought up to this point, the middle-aged man recalled another matter. He looked at his senior brother Yuan Hanjin again, and his heart trembled. I've investigated it before. Long Qingchong, the sect leader of the Heavenly Dragon sect, isn't a bloodthirsty person. Moreover, although the Myriad Devil sect has done some stupid things in the past, they've also paid a huge price. Long Qingchong doesn't have any motive to kill Lan Qing. However, the floating image pearl's image can't be fake. Long Qingchong had no motive to kill Lan Qing, but he still did it. What could make him do such a thing? Or is it possible that it was someone who made Long Qing rush out to kill the other party? The middle-aged man shuddered when he thought of this. The more he thought about it, the more terrifying it was. No, it couldn't be. Senior brother couldn't be that kind of person. Absolutely not. The two Emperor-grade spaceships of the Chunyang School left the Chunyang School at the speed of an Emperor-grade god. After some time they left the Tunglung province. However, after leaving the Tunglung province, the spaceships slowed down to the speed of a lesser Emperor-grade god. At this speed, even the young disciples of the Divine Emperor realm could vaguely see the scenery outside through the surrounding scenery. We've entered the state capital of Qing. The voice of Patriarch Lan Jingming of the righteous lineage was heard from the spaceship. His voice wasn't loud, so those who were cultivating wouldn't be affected. However, those who weren't cultivating would be able to hear him. It was only then that they realized they had left the Tunglung province. State capital of Qing? This is the state capital of Qing? This is the first time I've walked out of the Tunglung province. The scenery of the state capital of Qing doesn't look much different from the Tunglung province. This is the state capital of Qing, adjacent to the Tunglung province. It's the same mountain range. How different can it be? After Lan Jingming informed them that they had left the Tunglung province and entered the state capital of Qing, most of them were young, so many of them started to become active. Even Duan Lingtian was looking outside. This was also his first time leaving the Tunglung province after coming to the Shengang land. There are only 4 top Emperor-grade god forces in the state capital of Qing, which is one less than the Tunglung province. Lan Jingming continued to introduce the state capital of Qing. The 4 top Emperor-grade god forces in the state capital of Qing are the Heaven's Roar sect, the Puppet Villa, the Frigid Ice sect, and the 10,000 Swords Fort. The first 3 of them exist in the form of sects, which is similar to the Chunyang school. As for the 10,000 Swords Fort, it's a family, the Sword Deity family. In the current generation of the 10,000 Swords Fort, there are 3 people who have mastered the embryonic form of the sword principle. It is said that one of them is expected to master the sword principle soon. Of course, this news came from the 10,000 Swords Fort, so it's hard to tell if it's true or not. Lan Jingming's introduction piqued the interest of the young disciples, including Duan Lingtian. Although they had heard of the state capital of Qing before, they did not know much about it. Now that Lan Jingming was telling them these things that they did not know, they were naturally very interested. Currently, the most powerful force in the state capital of Qing is the Heaven's Roar sect. In the 7 Prefectures Feast 10,000 years ago, a young disciple from the Heaven's Roar sect made it to the top 10 and won 2 places for the Heaven's Roar sect to enter the secret land of the Holy Land. This time, one of the disciples from the Heaven's Roar sect successfully broke through to the Senior Emperor realm and became the first Senior Emperor realm in the state capital of Qing in the past 20,000 years. As Lan Jingming spoke, Duan Lingtian recalled that when he was still in the Tianlong clan, the Emperor realm elder in the 7 Kills Valley in Heping City in the Emperor Battle realm seemed to have mentioned this as well. At that time, Elder Silver Puppet from the Puppet Villa was also present, and he was also an Emperor realm expert. The 2 of them had a battle of words, from individuals to sects behind them, and neither of them gave in to the other. As Lan Jingming continued, Duan Lingtian and the rest gained a deeper understanding of the state capital of Qing. At the same time, they also knew that there were many young experts in the state capital of Qing. There is a young genius from the Heaven's Roar sect in the state capital of Qing. 1,000 years ago he fought with Machi Hong from the Machi family, but he was slightly inferior. Now, he might have already defeated Ma Qihong. When they heard Lan Jingming's words, someone immediately questioned, "Ancestor, that person was defeated by Ma Qihong 1,000 years ago. How could he defeat Ma Qihong now?" Ma Qihong has already entered the upper divine emperor realm. Ma Qihong was only a middle divine emperor 1,000 years ago, and he was defeated by him. How could he surpass him now? How could this be possible? When Lan Jingming heard this, he smiled faintly and said, "What if I told you that the genius from the Heaven's Roar sect just turned 5,000 years old 1,000 years ago? Now 1,000 years have passed. Although the Heaven's Roar sect has kept this information secret, I still think that he has most likely entered the upper divine emperor realm, and he might have entered the upper divine emperor realm earlier than Ma Qihong." When Lan Jingming said this, the people who were still doubting him immediately fell silent at this moment. 1,000 years ago, a genius from the Heaven's Roar sect who had just turned 5,000 years old was slightly inferior to Ma Qihong. 1,000 years later, Ma Qihong had entered the upper divine emperor realm, so how could that person have stayed the same? That person was a few thousand years younger than Ma Qihong, but he was still slightly inferior to Ma Qihong 1,000 years ago. This meant that his talent and comprehension were stronger than Ma Qihong's. Now, 1,000 years had passed, and Ma Qihong had already broken through to the upper divine emperor realm for more than 100 years. I didn't expect the Heaven's Roar sect to have such a genius. I've never heard of him before. Many people sighed. Yes, I know that there are a few outstanding geniuses in the younger generation of the Heaven's Roar sect, but they are all 8,000 or 9,000 years old. I've never heard of anyone who is only 6,000 years old. Now, it seems like the Heaven's Roar sect has hidden him. The Heaven's Roar sect must have done this to catch Ma Qihong off guard during the Seven Mansions banquet. That person is probably stronger than Ma Qihong. Perhaps he can even stand shoulder to shoulder with Duan Lingtian. As the crowd chatted, their eyes unconsciously fell on Duan Lingtian. At this time, Lan Jingming also looked at Duan Lingtian and said with a smile, "Duan Lingtian, if you encounter that person from the Heaven's Roar sect, you must not be careless." "Thank you for the reminder, Elder. I'll be careful." Duan Lingtian thanked Lan Jingming repeatedly. At the same time, his heart skipped a beat. Just as he had guessed, the other 6 mansions would not reveal their trump cards. It was all for the sake of unexpectedly using this trump card at the 7 prefectures feast. At this time, even though Duan Lingtian felt that his strength was not bad, he still felt slightly pressured. Chapter 4004. Just the sects in the state capital of Qing, which was adjacent to Tunglung province, had such a hidden trump card. What about the other sects in the other prefectures? For example, did the other 3 forces in the state capital of Qing have their own trump cards as well? Perhaps not all of them had their own trump cards, but it was possible that 1 or 2 forces did. Of course, it was also possible that other than the Heaven's Roar sect, none of the other 3 forces had their own trump cards. After all, monstrous talents were not common. For example, in Tunglung province, Duan Lingtian had previously thought that the other 4 forces might have their own trump cards that they would only reveal at the 7 prefectures banquet. Even the Machi clan, Ma Qihong, might not be the most outstanding person in the younger generation of the Machi clan. However, later on, Zhen Pingfan told him that the other 3 forces in the state capital of Qing were in the state capital of Qing. It was not difficult for the other 4 forces in Tunglung province to hide this from the other prefectures, but it was not easy for them to hide it from the Chunyang school, which was as famous as them in Tunglung province. At the very least, according to Zhen Pingfan, the Pure Sun sect knew that Machi Lu Su, the head of the Machi family, had a few illegitimate children, and there were a few god emperors in the alliance of benevolence and justice at odds. At that time, Duan Lingtian knew that the Chunyang school must have planted many spies in the 4 forces. Otherwise, they would not have been so confident in their ability to gather information. As for the other 4 forces, Duan Lingtian guessed that they had done the same. However, he was not sure if they had done as well as the Chunyang school. However, according to Zhen Pingfan, the other 4 forces were definitely not as good as the Chunyang school. This was because among the 5 forces in Tunglung province, the Chunyang school had the longest history. In fact, the Chunyang school had planted spies in the other 4 forces in Tunglung province in the early days. This had been passed down from generation to generation. According to Elder Zhen's words, there shouldn't be any accidents in Tunglung province. The only places that could have accidents would be the other prefectures. Duan Lingtian thought to himself, "Elder Zhen, How long will it take to reach the location of the Seven Manners banquet in the profound Jade Mansion? It had been half a month since Duan Lingtian and the others from the Chunyang school entered the state capital of Qin, but they had yet to leave. Along the way, Lan Jingming enthusiastically introduced Duan Lingtian and the rest to the local customs of the state capital of Qin. He also talked about the various major forces in the state capital of Qin, so it was not boring at all. Lan Jingming, the patriarch of the righteous lineage, Elder Jingshu, and an emperor god expert, also made the young disciples of Chunyang school feel close to him. They felt that this patriarch of the righteous lineage was kind and amiable. If we go there directly, it won't take long. Zhen Pingfan said, however, we have plenty of time this time, so we're not in a hurry to go there. It's always been like this in the past. It'll take about a month or two on the way. After listening to Zhen Pingfan, Duan Lingtian suddenly remembered something. Elder Zhen, you and Elder Yi weren't even 10,000 years old 10,000 years ago, right? You should have participated in the Seven Manners banquet 10,000 years ago, right? Whether it was Zhen Pingfan or Yi Qinfeng, they were not even 10,000 years old 10,000 years ago. In other words, they were qualified to represent the Chunyang school in the Seven Manners banquet. We were. Zhen Pingfan nodded, then looked at Yi Qinfeng, who was sitting cross-legged not far away with a complicated expression. At that time, I was ranked 12th in the Seven Manners banquet, while junior Uncle Yi was ranked outside the top 20. My results were the best among all the disciples sent out by the Chunyang school. In the last 100,000 years, no one from the Chunyang school had the same results as me in the 9 Seven Manners banquets. It had to be said that Zhen Pingfan's words shocked Duan Lingtian. In the Seven Manners banquet 10,000 years ago, this Elder Zhen actually didn't make it into the top 10? What shocked him the most was that Elder Yi Qinfeng also didn't make it into the top 10. Moreover, he was only ranked outside the top 20? What's going on? When Duan Lingtian looked at Zhen Pingfan again, the shock on his face was obvious. Their Chunyang school's number one person below the God Emperor level, a monstrous existence under 20,000 years old, and their Chunyang school's number one expert, also a monstrous genius under 20,000 years old, actually didn't make it into the top 10 in the Seven Manners banquet 10,000 years ago. Was the Seven Manners banquet so exaggerated? In the Seven Manners banquet 10,000 years ago, whether it was Zhen Pingfan or Yi Qinfeng, they actually didn't make it into the top 10? Facing Duan Lingtian's shock, Zhen Pingfan wasn't surprised at all. At the same time, he also guessed what Duan Lingtian was thinking. Are you thinking that with my and Martial Uncle Ye's current achievements, it's inconceivable that we didn't make it into the top 10 in the Seven Manners banquet 10,000 years ago? Zhen Pingfan asked with a smile. Duan Lingtian nodded. Zhen Pingfan shook his head and said, actually, whether it's me or Martial Uncle Yi, we only started to rise rapidly after 10,000 years. Especially Martial Uncle Yi. He came from a lower plane. When he participated in the Seven Manners banquet, he had just entered the God Emperor level, about the same as you now. Of course, I'm only talking about the same cultivation. At that time, Martial Uncle Ye's comprehension of the laws was not as good as yours. The reason he was able to make it into the top 20 in the Seven Manners banquet was because he had grasped the embryonic form of Sword Dao at that time. I can understand what you're thinking now. In fact, if you tell many people who don't know about this, they'll definitely be shocked as well. At this point, Zhen Pingfan paused for a moment before he continued, let me put it this way. Achievements before 10,000 years old don't represent achievements in a lifetime. 10,000 years ago, of the people who made it into the top 10 of the Seven Prefectures feast, other than those who died by accident, none of the survivors were stronger than me, let alone compared to Martial Uncle Yi. My father often said that if I didn't take the wrong path before 10,000 years old, not to mention first place in the Seven Manners banquet, I would even have a chance to make it into the top 3. At that time, I was obsessed with comprehending multiple profundities of the laws at the same time because I wanted to break through the restrictions between the various laws and use multiple laws at the same time. However, in the end, my experiment failed because it was impossible to use multiple laws at the same time. Even for those who came from the lower planes, if they wanted to use multiple laws at the same time, they could only use their main body and their law avatars separately or use their law avatars and other law avatars separately. At this point, Zhen Pingfan smiled bitterly. Even now, I don't understand why I was so busy with these things back then. Did I think I was better than everyone else in the world? That I was a genius? If it wasn't for that period of neglect, I would have already stepped into the intermediate God Emperor realm. Young and frivolous, young and ignorant. At this point Zhen Pingfan sighed repeatedly. Duan Tian was stunned. This elder Zhen actually had such a past when he was young before 10,000 years old? Researching multiple laws at the same time? In this world it seemed like there was no one who could do this, right? Whether it was humans or other life forms, it was impossible. It was as if they were limited by the laws of heaven and earth. However, this elder Jin actually went to research this? Was he crazy? Naturally, Duan Tian did not say this out loud. Otherwise he was afraid he would be beaten to death by elder Zhen. He could only say that elder Zhen was too naive when he was young. As for junior Uncle Yi, he didn't take the wrong path like I did. However, as you know, he came from the lower planes. Moreover, he came from the mundane realm to the Devata realm. When he came to the mystic gangland, his foundation was weak and he had no advantage at all. It was only after he came to Chunyang school that his strength improved by leaps and bounds. In less than 20,000 years, he became an intermediate god emperor. Moreover, his strength is even stronger than the other intermediate god emperors in the sect, including my father. When Zhen Pingfan mentioned Yi Qinfeng, his expression was as complicated as it could be. Yi Qinfeng was actually about the same age as him. He had personally witnessed Yi Qinfeng's rapid growth. In the beginning he still wanted to compete with Yi Qinfeng. However, after a while he was defeated by Yi Qinfeng's speed of improvement. 10,000 years ago Yi Qinfeng was not even as strong as him. After the Seven Mansions banquet, Yi Qinfeng's strength improved by leaps and bounds. Soon after he caught up with Zhen Pingfan and left him behind. After that he caught up with his father Zhen Yunfeng. After that he even surpassed his father Zhen Yunfeng. In Zhen Pingfan's opinion, Yi Qinfeng was not only a monster, but he was also a complete freak. Elder Yi, Duan Lingtian looked at Yi Qinfeng who was sitting cross-legged on the side of the flying ship. At this moment Yi Qinfeng's eyes were closed. It was unknown if he was cultivating or just resting. He did not expect Elder Ye's strength 10,000 years ago was not even comparable to his current strength. Moreover, it was far from his current strength. I wonder how long it will take for me to reach Elder Ye's level and surpass him? When Duan Lingtian thought about this, his eyes shone with anticipation. During the rest of the journey, Duan Lingtian's heart was still in shock. People like Zhen Pingfan and Yi Qinfeng were actually trampled under the feet of a group of young geniuses from Tunglung province in the Seven Mansions banquet 10,000 years ago. Did the two of them have such an experience? Even if he knew the truth, he still could not calm down for a long time. Elder Zhen, what is the cultivation level of the top 10 people in the last Seven Mansions banquet? Duan Lingtian asked curiously. Zhen Pingfan smiled disdainfully when he heard this. Of the top 10 people back then, only 8 are still alive. One of the top 3 is dead. The person in first place back then is now a lower god emperor. Moreover, he only became a lower god emperor 500 years ago. The person in third place is a higher god emperor. It is said that he is about to break through to the lower god emperor realm. However, that is only a rumor. I don't think it will be that easy. The two of them are not from Tunglung province. It is the person from the Heaven's Roar sect of the state capital of Qing who fought for an opportunity for the higher god emperor of the Heaven's Roar sect. He was ranked 9th at the Seven Mansions banquet and has not broken through to the lower god emperor realm yet. Chapter 4005. After hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, Duan Lingtian couldn't help but sigh inwardly. That was then and this was now. Perhaps it was referring to Zhen Pingfan and Yi Qinfeng. 10,000 years ago, the two of them represented Tunglung province's Chunyang school in the Seven Prefectures banquet, but they failed to make the top 10. How many people took them seriously? And now, 10,000 years later, in the Seven Prefectures, even those rare upper god emperors knew about Zhen Pingfan and Yi Qinfeng. Especially Yi Qinfeng. 10,000 years ago he wasn't even as eye-catching as Zhen Pingfan. But 10,000 years later when Yi Qinfeng's wind sword Dao appeared, who didn't know about him? Martial Uncle Yi. Zhen Pingfan had just finished chatting with Duan Lingtian when he looked at Yi Qinfeng and said, "There's a city ahead. Tell Martial Uncle Lu and let's rest there for 2 days before setting off." Hearing Zhen Pingfan's words, the eyes of the group of youngsters in the flying ship immediately lit up. They would also feel bored if they stayed in the flying ship for a long time. And in fact it wasn't just these youngsters. Even Lan Jingming and the other old people actually supported this idea. However, they couldn't show it on the surface so as to avoid giving others the impression that they were old and disrespectful. In fact, Every 10,000 years, Chunyang School would participate in the 7 prefectures banquet. They didn't directly rush over but had a rest along the way. Okay. Almost at the instant Yi Qinfeng's voice fell, Yi Qinfeng opened his eyes and responded. Then he sent a message to Lu Fenggu, who was controlling the flying ship not far away. Naturally, Lu Fenggu agreed without hesitation. And when the people on the other side learned from Lu Fenggu that they would be resting in the city ahead for a few days, the group of youngsters was naturally overjoyed. Rest for a few days before setting off. Don't cause trouble during this time, Yi Qinfeng said indifferently. These words were also directed at everyone in the flying ship. Of course, our Chunyang School doesn't cause trouble, but we aren't afraid of trouble either. If you really want to die, don't be so courteous. However, it's best to reveal your identity first. If you still insist on seeking death after knowing that you're from Chunyang School, there's no need to be polite to them anymore. Yi Qinfeng looked like a gentleman, but in fact he was a very strong and ruthless person, which could be seen from his words. In another spaceship, Lu Fenggu's words were even more direct. If anyone dares to cause trouble in the city ahead, get the hell out of here. If someone provokes you and reveals your identity, and the other party doesn't give you any face, there's no need for you to go easy on them. If you aren't a match for them, just call a few more people over. If you aren't a match for them, you can look for us. This was what Lu Fenggu said to the group of youngsters. Not long after, the people from Chunyang School entered the city ahead. The city was not small. After Duan Lingtian and the others from the Chunyang School entered, they quickly found out that this was a city controlled by a God-Emperor level force. However, this God-Emperor level force was just an ordinary God-Emperor level force in the state capital of Qing. There was only one God-Emperor level force in this force. Snow Forest City. This was also the name of the city that Duan Lingtian and the others were going to stay in. The people from Chunyang School disembarked from the God-Emperor level spaceship outside the city. Then, under the lead of Yi Qinfeng and Lu Fenggu, they entered the city. A large group of people walking into Snow Forest City naturally attracted a lot of attention. Even when they entered a spacious inn, Duan Lingtian could still sense that someone was following them. However, when the innkeeper of the inn found out about the identities of Duan Lingtian and the others, the people who were following them left. Elder Yi, Elder Lu, our clan leader has heard about your arrival and wishes to pay you a visit personally. Is it convenient for you? The patriarch said that all of you are seniors that he's admired for a long time. It's our Shui clan's honor that all of you are able to bring the geniuses of your esteemed sect to rest in our Shui clan's inn. Our Shui clan won't take even a single divine crystal. The innkeeper of the inn was from the Shui clan of Snow Forest City. When he found out about the identities of Duan Lingtian and the others, he sent a message back to his clan. The Shui clan was also shocked. Although the Shui clan was also an Emperor God level clan, they only had one newly ascended lower Emperor God. They could not compare to a lower Emperor God level sect like Chunyang School. In the eyes of the Shui clan, Chunyang School was a giant. This was especially so when they heard the news from Tunglung province that Chunyang School's Yi Qinfeng had a full soul superior divine sword and his strength was comparable to a higher Emperor God. At that time, in the eyes of the Shui clan, Chunyang School was on the same level as the Howling Sky sect of the state capital of Qing. Let him come. Yi Qinfeng and Lu Fenggu looked at each other and finally nodded. Since the innkeeper was so enthusiastic, they did not want to turn down his good intentions. Moreover, if they refused, they could be said to be arrogant and look down on others. They were afraid that they would drag down Chunyang School's reputation. Seeing that Duan Lingtian and Lu Fenggu had agreed, the innkeeper became even more enthusiastic. He ordered the servants in the inn to arrange rooms for Duan Lingtian and the others. As for Yi Qinfeng, Lu Fenggu, and the other higher-ups of Chunyang School, the innkeeper personally arranged rooms for them. Although they were called rooms, they were actually individual courtyards. Duan Lingtian was also given a quiet courtyard. However, after staying in the courtyard for a while, Duan Lingtian decided to go out for a walk. Speaking of which, he had not been out for a long time. This time, after leaving Chunyang School, he had been in the spaceship. It was not easy for him to settle down in a completely unfamiliar city. He wanted to go out for a walk. In the end, when Duan Lingtian stepped out of the inn, he saw many young Chunyang School disciples coming out. Duan Ling, shall we go for a walk? Yi Yingkai followed Duan Lingtian out. When he saw Duan Lingtian standing at the entrance of the inn and looking around, he could not help but extend an invitation. Duan Lingtian did not refuse and nodded. He had only intended to walk around casually. If he had a companion, he might even be able to chat for a while. Moreover, Yi Kai was Yi Tong's disciple. Moreover, Yi Kai was not a bad person. Duan Ling Tian did not reject him. At this time, the other Chunyang school disciples who wanted to invite Duan Ling Tian to walk with them did not say anything when they saw that Yi Kai was one step ahead of them. Compared to Duan Ling Tian's amiability, Yi Kai's indifference made them stop. Yi Kai is very cold to others. However, in front of Duan Ling Tian he is very amiable. A Chunyang school disciple said. If you had Duan Ling Tian's talent and comprehension, believe it or not, Yi Kai would look at you differently too. Rather than saying it's the reality, it's more accurate to say that Yi Kai is only willing to talk to people who are stronger than him. Let alone us, even the disciples of the Hidden Sword branch have not seen him get close to any young people. Another Chunyang school disciple shook his head. With Duan Ling Tian and Yi Kai's hearing, they could hear the discussion between the Chunyang school disciples clearly even though they were some distance away. In response, Duan Ling Tian could not help but glance at Yi Kai. Yi Kai, on the other hand, had an indifferent expression on his face. It was as though he did not take those words to heart. Duan Ling Tian, I heard from Grandmaster that you came from the mundane realm like Grandmaster? Yi Kai did not seem to notice Duan Ling Tian's gaze. He asked as though nothing had happened. Yes. Duan Ling Tian nodded in response. Amazing. Yi Kai sighed. The person I admire the most in my life is Grandmaster. It's because he came from the mundane realm. I went there on purpose. When I arrived, I found out that the cultivation environment there was worse than the rumors said. At that time, it was hard for me to imagine that a person like Grandmaster would come from such a backward place. Yi Kai paused for a moment before he continued, Now, there's one more person I admire. It's you, Duan Ling Tian. According to Grandmaster, even when Grandmaster was 10,000 years old, he was not as good as you are now. You're not even 3,000 years old. However, although you're faster than Grandmaster in the early stages, I don't think you're unreachable. After all, you're only a middle-level divine emperor now. In terms of cultivation base, you're not even as good as me. Yi Kai's eyes flashed as he said bluntly, I see you as a target to surpass. I only hope that you, Duan Ling Tian, won't be surpassed by me too quickly. Yi Kai's words were laced with confidence. It was as though he was deluding himself with confidence. I can do it. I can definitely do it. I'll definitely surpass Duan Ling Tian in the near future. I'll wait for you to surpass me. Duan Ling Tian smiled faintly. He could see that Yi Kai was using his confidence to influence him. Yi Kai's indomitable will was enough to make his future path much easier. At this time, if Yi Kai felt inferior to him, his strength would not inspire Yi Kai's desire to improve. Duan Ling Tian and Yi Kai walked on the streets of Snow Forest City. Occasionally they would see some shops. Duan Ling Tian would enter any shop that might have something he wanted. On the other hand, Yi Kai did not seem to be interested in anything. He did not buy things occasionally like Duan Ling Tian. However, Duan Ling Tian felt that it was normal. For a genius like Yi Kai, he was probably focused on cultivation. He probably only knew about rare things. For example, it was normal for him to not be interested in the supplementary medicine that he was buying now. Brother Fuchi, I didn't lie to you, right? There's really someone who looks exactly like you. When Yi Kai and Duan Ling Tian saw one of the two people blocking their path, Duan Ling Tian was stunned and came to a halt almost at the same time. The other person stared at Yi Kai and said to the young man beside him as if he was asking for credit. This young man was wearing a light green robe. He had a handsome face and a gentle temperament. This was not the main point. The main point was that he looked exactly like Yi Kai. No matter if it was the facial features or the expression, there was no difference. Only the temperament was very different. Duan Ling Tian was stunned. Wasn't this too similar? If they were not twins, he would not believe it. They shouldn't be twins, right? Yi Kai was brought back by Elder Yi when he was still an infant. I didn't hear Elder Jin say that Yi Kai has a twin. Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. Chapter 4006. Duan Ling Tian was in a daze. The green-robed youth opposite him was also in a daze as he stared at Yi Kai. Yi Kai himself was also in a daze as he stared at the youth. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. After a while, Yi Kai regained his senses. He looked at the youth in front of him and asked in a hoarse voice, "Who are you?" "Fuchi." At this moment, The youth opposite him who looked like Yi Yingkai also regained his senses and immediately responded to Yi Yingcai's question. The reason why Fu Qi responded to Yi Yingkai without any hesitation was because he felt a sense of familiarity from Yi Yingkai. It was as though he was not a stranger but a family member. In fact, Yi Yingkai also felt the same way. If not, he would not have lost his composure. Why don't the two of you find a quiet place to talk? It's not very convenient on the streets, right? At this moment, Duan Lingtian also noticed that many people were looking at them. Some people even recognized the green-robed youth. Isn't that the genius of the Fu family, Fu Qi? Look, this white-robed youth looks exactly like Fu Qi. Oh my god. They really look exactly the same. They can't be twins, can they? Twins? Now that you mention it, it's possible. Back then, when Fu Qi's mother, the young mistress of the Fu family, brought him back, no one knew who his father was. Maybe his mother and father separated, and each of them had a son? 2 sons? Are they twins? More and more people gathered to watch. At this moment, after hearing Duan Lingtian's reminder, Yi Yingkai and Fu Qi regained their senses and left with Duan Lingtian and the other young woman. The person who brought Fu Qi over was a young woman who looked like she was in her early 20s. However, her real age was probably higher than that. Women like to be young and beautiful. With a good cultivation base, it was enough to keep one's youth forever and even regain one's youthfulness. It all depended on one's own wishes. Soon, Duan Lingtian and the other 3 arrived at a restaurant and booked a private room. The 4 of them sat around a table. Yi Yingkai was still looking at Fu Qi. I still have to tell Elder Yi about this matter. Duan Lingtian knew about Yi Yingcai's past from Zhen Pingfan. Zhen Pingfan had also reminded him not to tell Yi Yingkai about his background. This was also because Chunyang School had promised the Alliance of Benevolence and Justice that they would not nurture an enemy for the Alliance. Duan Lingtian immediately sent a message to Yi Qinfeng, informing him of what had just happened and the current situation. Yi Qinfeng was silent for a moment before he asked, "Do you think they could be twins?" "That's hard to say, but it's very likely." Duan Lingtian didn't dare to say that Yi Yingkai and Fu Qi were twins. After all, it wasn't impossible for 2 people to look exactly the same in this world. However, because his wife, Ke, had a twin sister in both the past and present life, and he had met other twins before, he felt that it was more likely that Yi Yingkai and Fu Qi were twins. "Elder Yi, if this is really Yi Yingcai's twin brother, he's very likely to know about his background," Duan Lingtian said to Yi Qinfeng. Yi Qinfeng quickly said, "Let's just let nature take its course. Don't tell me we can forcibly separate them when they've already met? Won't that make him even more confused? Moreover, even if we separate them, if we don't eliminate the young man who looks like him, he'll find out about his background sooner or later." Duan Lingtian understood Yi Qinfeng's words. Let it go. Let nature take its course. After receiving Yi Qinfeng's reply, Duan Lingtian didn't say anything else. Since Yi Qinfeng didn't want to interfere, there was nothing for him to do either. Why do I feel that? Elder Yi isn't worried at all that Yi Yingkai will find out about his background? Duan Lingtian looked puzzled. Moreover, even if this is really Yi Yingcai's twin brother, would it be so coincidental that Yi Yingkai and I met him here? Moreover, although Elder Zhen was the one who asked Elder Yi why we stopped in Snow Forest City, Elder Yi seemed to be the one who drove the spaceship in this direction. Even the patriarch of the tyrannical Saber clan followed our spaceship. When he thought up to here, Duan Lingtian had an extremely terrified feeling. Could it be that all of this was instigated by Elder Yi? Secretly taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian sent a message to Zhen Pingfan and told him what had happened. Zhen Pingfan was silent for a moment before he said, "Actually, I suggested Junior Uncle Yi to stop and rest because he asked me to tell him. However, I didn't know why he did that at that time. If he wanted to rest, why didn't he just say so? Now, it seems like this is a trap. A trap to let Yi Qizai know about his background. Since Junior Uncle Yi said to let nature take its course, then let nature take its course. If I'm not mistaken, Junior Uncle Yi is most likely doing this to motivate Yi Qizai. I just don't know why he suddenly had this idea." As he spoke, Zhen Pingfan was a little confused. At this moment, in the courtyard of a guest room with an excellent location in the inn, a dignified old man dressed in brocade robes retreated. This old man was the clan leader of the Shui clan, a god emperor rank clan. He was a newly ascended lower god emperor. He had just finished visiting Yi Qinfeng. After the old man left, Yi Qinfeng returned to his room and sat cross-legged on his bed. His eyes shone brightly. Yang Qinya from the Pingxing clan has improved tremendously because of his father's death. If Inkai knows about his background, he will be more motivated. And even the Chunyang school did not tell Inkai about his background. In the future, even if the Benevolent and Righteous Alliance wants to blame us, they can't blame the Chunyang school. All of this was indeed Yi Qinfeng's plan. Back then, after Yi Qinfeng had brought Yi Qizai back to the Pure Sun sect, he had deliberately investigated the family Yi Qizai belonged to, as well as Yi Qizai's relatives and friends. In the end, he found that Yi Qizai's mother was still alive. Moreover, there was a twin brother who was still alive. His mother brought him back to her family in the state capital of Qin, a God Emperor rank family. A God Emperor rank family in Snow Forest City. However, even though he knew this because of the agreement with the Benevolent and Righteous Alliance, he never planned to tell Yi Qizai the truth. He even ordered his disciple Yi Tong not to tell Yi Inkai the truth. Until the last time when he saw Yang Qinya's improvement by chance under the reminder of his disciple, he made the decision today. Duan Lingtian watched the show from the side, listening to Yi Inkai and Fu Qi talk about their backgrounds. One was a genius disciple of the Chunyang school, a God Emperor rank sect in Tunglung province. The other was a disciple of the Fu family, a God Emperor rank family in the state capital of Qin. He took his mother's surname and did not know who his father was, nor did he hear his mother mention it. However, he knew that he had a twin brother. He heard from his mother that he had died an unnatural death. Moreover, his mother would often become taciturn because of his twin brother. Every year on the same day she would wear a set of plain clothes and avoid meat and fish. It was said that that day was the anniversary of his twin brother's death. You have a twin brother? Yi Qizai was shocked. Next, should we go and meet Fu Qi's mother? Duan Lingtian sat on the side, coldly watching the situation unfold. Just as he thought of this, Fu Qi indeed proposed to bring Yi Inkai to meet his mother. Yi Inkai naturally agreed without hesitation. After that, Duan Lingtian followed after him. Hey, I still don't know your name. Yi Inkai walked in front with Fu Qi, while Duan Lingtian and the young lady beside Fu Qi followed behind. The young lady took the initiative to greet Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian nodded to the lady. How should I address you, miss? I'm Fu Yi. Brother Fu Qi, this is my cousin. Brother Fu Qi, he's my cousin, Fu Qi said with a smile. Fu Yi was a talkative person. On the way to the Fu family, Duan Lingtian learned from her that she had seen Yi Inkai and him first and then sent a message to Fu Qi to come over. After that, he knew what had happened and experienced it together. 7th Miss Young Master Fu Qi. As a God Emperor family, the Fu family's mansion was very spacious and occupied a large area of Snow Forest City. The gate was grand and there were 2 rows of guards in front of the gate, a total of 10 people. When they saw Fu Yi and Fu Qi, they bowed respectfully. On the way, Duan Lingtian also learned from Fu Yi that the Fu family had a very close relationship with the master of Snow Forest City, the God Emperor family, the Shui family. It could even be said that the Fu family was a subsidiary family of the Shui family. In Snow Forest City, if the Shui family was the first, then the Fu family was the second. The current patriarch of the Fu family, Fu Yi's uncle's wife, was the granddaughter of the current patriarch of the Shui family. The patriarch of the Shui family had many grandchildren but only one granddaughter, so he was especially fond of her. Mother. Duan Lingtian followed Fu Qi and Yi Tsai and saw Fu Qi's mother. She was a graceful and beautiful woman with a heroic spirit between her eyebrows. It could be seen that she was a heroine in her youth. She saw Yi Inkai before Fu Qi introduced him. After a moment of daze, her beautiful face turned pale. Hello madam? Yi Inkai looked at the woman in front of him and his heart trembled. Was this his mother? Was he Fu Qi's twin brother who had been dead for many years? If he was, then didn't he find someone to marry? In the past, he had always thought that he was an orphan. From now on, the alliance of benevolence and righteousness will have one more enemy. Now Duan Lingtian could completely imagine Yi Inkai's reaction when he confirmed that the mother and son in front of him were really his family. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.